Here.
Member Obaji,
Here.
Member MD,
Here.
Commissioner Linez,
Here.
Commissioner Bogosang.
Absent.
Thank you. Chairman Brand.
Here, thank you. Loading publication. Okay. So again, this is the Redondo Beach Housing Authority. And order of agenda. Any motion to approve the order of agenda or changes to order of agenda?
Motion to approve order of agenda?
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Linez, second by Member Horvath. Any objections? Okay, so ordered. Any blue folder items for this Housing Authority?
No, Mayor, no blue folder items for this agenda.
Okay, there are 3 consent calendar items. Again, anyone can speak on this. Any member can pull any item, and any member like to pull any item. Okay, any member of the public like to speak on any consent calendar item for the Redondo Beach Housing Authority?
Okay, I have 2 people. I'm not sure if this is the area they want to speak on, but I have Kim Isaac.
Okay. Go ahead, Kim.
Actually, no, I don't want to speak on this. I just, I'll just wait till later. I'll unraise it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next person is Holly Osborne.
Okay, this is on the Housing Authority. I don't know if this is exactly the right place, but let me start my timer.
Well, this is, hold off, Holly. This is the consent calendar for the Housing Authority. So I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
I want to comment on their presentation. When is that?
That's coming up next.
Oh, okay. Turn me off then.
Okay, well, we'll put you in the queue there. I can't remember, was there a motion to approve this? Motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, seconded by Councilmember Narenheim. Any objections? Okay, so ordered. Next up, again, this is the Housing Authority, public participation on non-agenda items. Anybody like to speak on non-agenda items? Again, this is the Housing Authority.
Yeah, we have none, Mayor.
Okay.
And if I may interrupt just for a moment, I just want to let you know that YouTube has been restored. And if you search on it, it's City Council Meeting Part 2. And that's how you can locate it online.
Okay, City Council Meeting Part 2.
That is what I'm told.
Okay, hopefully that works for people. Let us know if it doesn't. Okay, next up is new business, a status report on Section 8 and Fair Housing Program. Cameron Harding, our Housing Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We actually have our housing supervisor, Angelica Zavala, who will make the presentation tonight.
Here, just look at mine.
Hello, good evening, everyone. This is going to be a quarterly status report of the City of Redondo Beach Section 8 and the Fair Housing Programs for the months of March, April, and May of 2022. We currently have 441 families on our program, the majority being mostly seniors or disabled. Our goal, as outlined in our agency plan, is to house 633 families here in Redondo Beach. And the challenges that we face to reach our goal continue to be rising rents, low vacancies, negative stereotypes about our program, and low landlord participation. The table on screen reflects the Section 8 activity over the last 3 months. We were able to execute 6 contracts. We renewed 119 leases. We had 4 families that moved out of the program. The average monthly housing payment is $1,271, and the total amount dispersed in housing payments for the last 3 months was $1.675 million. The following are funding highlights in regards to the Section 8 program. In May, just last month, the Housing Authority received its calendar year 2022 funding award letter. Both our Housing Choice Voucher Program and our VASH program will continue to be fully funded. Additionally, we will receive sufficient funds to cover all of our administrative expenses. In May of last year, our BHA was allocated funding to house 29 emergency housing voucher eligible families here in Redondo Beach. Since then, we've partnered with LASA for family referrals. We've also entered into an interagency agreement with LA County Housing Authority so that our families can use their vouchers anywhere in LA County, not just Redondo Beach. Since we started receiving referrals, which was late in November, we've received approximately 30 referrals from LASA. We've been able to issue 15 vouchers, and we've housed 3 families here in Redondo Beach. And last, our BHA continues to be designated a high-performing agency. Another highlight of our program is the VASH program, which is housing for homeless veterans. We currently have 30 veterans housed in Redondo Beach under the HUD VASH program. Just last month, we were able to increase the payment standard of a HUD voucher, and we increased it to 140% of the fiscal year 2022 fair market rents. And our hopes is that with this increased payment standard, our veterans will be able to find and secure housing, not just in Redondo Beach, but anywhere in LA County. Our Section 8 waiting list. Our waiting list was last opened in September of 2015. We currently have about 4,200 families on that waiting list. Just last month, we pulled 100 families, and we've scheduled eligibility interviews for the week of June 20th. Hopefully, we'll be able to issue more vouchers. And any applicant who wants to check the status on their waiting list can always call the Housing Authority, or they can call the number on screen, 855-361-9512, or visit the website, www.waitlistcheck.com. The Housing Authority continues to refer those families in need of fair housing assistance to the Housing Rights Center. Anyone who needs to speak to a housing advisor can call the Housing Rights Center hotline. Their number is 1-800-477-5977. If they prefer to email, their email address is info@housingrightcenter.org. Or if anyone wants to schedule an appointment to speak to a housing advisor, these appointments are via phone or via Zoom. They can visit their website at www.housingrightcenter.org. Housing advisors are able to assist in any discrimination investigations, any landlord-tenant mediation, or any counseling services. This concludes my quarterly report. I'm here and welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angelica. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Did you have a question, Lauren?
Yes, in addition to, these are all great programs for the lower income level residents of Redondo Beach. And I know we're always struggling to find landlords who are willing to participate in the program. We've had people in the past say how wonderful this program has been for them as landlords because it's guaranteed income for them. And so I highly encourage people to participate if you're a landlord in this program. I also want to make sure that it's also on our website is base housing. If you want to support the people who are active military in our area, the LA Air Force Base creates huge economic development, and it's in the billions around this neighborhood in this area. And one of the things that the Air Force Base has always said is the lack of housing. And it's not affordable housing because they get a base housing allowance from the federal government. Where they have a problem is the high rate of to be able to put down a deposit. So when you're coming from a place like, South Carolina, and you have to come into California and come up with an extra $10,000 to put in first and last rent, that is really a hindrance to the families of the military. So if there's landlords out there that they'll get the name of the commanding officer and they're willing to waive the deposit for these active military families, which is a really good bet because you have a lot of different backups if something should happen, then the Air Force Base wants to hear from you, and the Housing Authority will connect you to the Air Force Base to help get your property advertised as well. So there's different options for you to help in the community. And I just, and if I'm saying anything wrong, let me know. But I just want to put that out there and make sure people know that there's other programs as well. And we need landlords that are willing to help both the Section 8, the VASH, and to the military housing.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Council? Sorry, we don't have this functionality set up. I normally see it. Are there any public comments?
Yes, we
On
have
this report.
We have Holly Osborne, would like to speak on this item. There you go.
Unmute. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff. This is Holly Osborne, District 5. I have been watching these housing presentations on and off over a period of several years. They talk about how the city is using government-provided funds for Section 8 housing, which provides a subsidy between what a lower-income Redondo Beach resident can afford and what the actual rent is for an apartment. This procedure depends on finding a property owner who is willing to accept this method of payment, but as the housing presentations pointed out, it can be a good deal for the owner because he will get paid his rent. In this way, a number of citizens can afford their housing who might otherwise not be able to. But the presentations I have watched, including today, largely said that the city cannot get enough landlords to participate. And this leads me to my idea. What if, as a condition for a new development, and this would just be small scale one, the city were to require that the builder developer agree to accept a certain number of Section 8 tenants? Under the latest zoning regulations and loopholes from Sacramento, if a developer is tasked to provide, for example, 3 affordable, i.e. subsidized housing units, he provides a subsidy himself. So he can overcharge on the rest of the units or go to all sorts of contortions to increase the total number of units and not provide what would realistically be the required number of parking spaces, and thus in many cases come up with a crowded and not environmentally friendly configuration. If instead the city arranged for the subsidies via the Section 8 process, the developer would not have to go through these contortions to obtain his subsidy and might be able to design a better project. I realize this method would only work for small projects, but I want to know if it's feasible, or rather what could be done to make it feasible. Thank you. And in PS, Sacramento has provided these loopholes for the developer, but they are based on total acreage of the property and not the shape. And the shape of and location of a property, an alley or corner, is often more important than the actual acreage when you're developing, but Sacramento ignores that fact, and that's why you need to sign the zoning initiative when the signature gathering starts up again. But anyway, please answer the question. Could we use this method of requiring the developer to provide Section 8 housing? Thank you.
Thank you. You want to try that one, Angelica or Cameron?
Yeah, I don't think that's something that would really fall into our purview. That might be something that maybe the city attorney's office or another department might be able to help us out with. We really just facilitate the existing programs. This seems like something that would be a little bit outside of our wheelhouse here. So maybe we can reach out to some of the other departments and see if that's something they could assist us with looking into.
Right. Yeah, no, thanks, Cameron. It's a novel idea, Holly, but yeah, our staff doesn't set policy, but maybe the council and working with the city attorney can find some way to do that. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Any other
Okay, Mayor,
speakers?
that concludes the speakers.
Okay. Is there a motion to, receive and file the status report? Or is there any other comments people would like to make? Sorry, I don't have access to it. Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, seconded by Councilmember Obaji. Any objections? Okay, so ordered. Any referrals to staff by any of the members? Yeah, I guess I'll referral to staff, and maybe we'll ask the city attorney how he thinks we might even begin to pursue that idea. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Obaji, seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Any objections? Okay, so ordered. Next up is blue folder item, or I'm sorry, roll call. We're returning to a regular meeting of the city council. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim,
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein,
Here.
Councilmember Horvath,
Here.
Councilmember Obaji,
Here.
Councilmember MD,
Here.
Mayor Brand.
Here, thank you. Any blue folder items for this meeting?
Yes, Mayor. Let's see, we have for J1, public participation on non-agenda items, public communications, you received 2 emails related to, because there was a numerous amount. L1, regarding the fiscal year 2022, 2023 proposed budget, 5-year capital improvement program, you received public communications. Also for N1, which is for the waterfront education facility, received resumes and qualifications of the Ocean Encounter team. That includes the blue folder items.
Okay, is there a motion to admit those to the record?
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Obaji, second by Councilmember Nierenheim. Any objection? Okay, so ordered. Next up is our consent calendar. And tonight we have 22 items on consent. We'll vote for these all at once. You're happy to comment on any item in the public. And anybody want to pull an item can request one. I'll go through the council. Councilmember Nierenheim, any consent calendar items you'd like to pull for further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to pull items H 13 and 16.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Obaji.
No, thank you.
And Councilmember MD.
No, thank you.
Okay, you don't have any. Is there anybody in the public who'd like to comment on any consent calendar item other than H13 and H16?
Let me just double check and look. Okay, so we have e-comments and no Zoom comments here.
Okay, I guess I'll entertain a motion to approve consent calendar other than item H13 and H16.
Make a motion to approve all consent calendar items except for items H 13 and H 16.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Nierenheim, second by Councilmember Horvath. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, do you have any items to read, Eleanor?
Yes, Mayor, there's probably like 5. So H9, adopt by title only ordinance number 3230-22, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, adding municipal code, chapter 15, to title 3 regarding the unlawful possession of catalytic converters for second reading and adoption. H10, adopt by title only resolution number CC-2206-030, a resolution City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, approving the suspension of preferential parking hours in the Vincent 2 preferential parking districts for limited hours on June 8th and June 9th, 2022 for Redondo Beach Unified School District commencement and graduation ceremony. H12, adopt by title only resolution number CC-2206-031, a resolution City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, amending the official book of classifications for the position of Fire Division Chief. One more. H21, adopt by title only resolution number CC-2206-032, a resolution City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, proclaiming Sunday, September 11, 2022 as Open Water Swim Day in the City of Redondo Beach in sponsorship and support of the 4th annual Swim the Avenues water sports event to be held in the city, Redondo Beach coastal waters, and in appreciation of the County of Los Angeles efforts to permit the event and provide logistical support. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Eleanor. Item H13, Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. Yeah, you know, this is, item H13, so everyone knows, is an agreement with our housing element update, and it's our consultant contractor, Veronica Tam, we've had for many, many, many years. It's, well, I mean, guys, let you explain it real quick. You know better than I do. I just have some questions on it.
Sure.
Sean,
make
great
sure you-
great overview of the contractor and who she is and what she does for us.
Yeah, we'll do. And just, Sean, why don't you introduce yourself too?
Yeah, hi, Sean Scully, Planning Manager, Community Development Department. Veronica Tam's been working with us for years now, and her contract is for the 6-cycle housing element update. We started that contract in 2/20, October, and been working diligently with her on all the aspects required of the housing element. She's working with numerous other jurisdictions as well, trying to accomplish the same thing we are. She helped us tremendously with our appeal of our RENA number as well. We weren't ultimately successful, but we got a lot of traction, I think, on that.
So this is the first amendment, and I'm guessing the amendment is here because it's taking us longer than expected to get our final approval. This contract is just for the housing element, the sixth cycle, correct? Not the previous cycles. It's a new contract.
Yeah, this latest amendment's really to get us through this final push. We're on draft 3, 4, Sean, I forget. Draft 3 and submission to HCD, the State Department. We plan on bringing back our latest revised housing element proposal to you in July. And then we will be making, we hope, final submission to the state. But we have been making progress. Veronica's been key to that. And this $10,000 amendment is really needed to compensate her for the extra work associated with the various revisions and updates.
So it's $172,000. Did we originally go out to bid for this contract?
I can't recall, Sean, you remember if we did an RFP at the time of original award?
Yeah,
I don't remember if we did. I don't think we, I can rephrase
don't
that.
believe we did.
I don't think we did. And when I see these large contracts, we start getting extended, and I realize it's not our fault. We've done everything we possibly can do. But I've said it many times before, these large contracts going out to bid, especially for something that we have, we know on a timeline that's coming up, is I think in the future, for me, very important to bid and new blood, new contracts going out to bid, and understanding now, especially that the landscape is so much different with HCD that we get, we're going to have the best we can get. So
Absolutely. And I think after we get through this round, and hopefully we get through this round here in the next couple of months, with any luck, we won't have to do this again for a while. And when we do, we'll have an opportunity to go through a comprehensive selection process for the most contemporary support service.
okay, that was it. Thank you.
How long is this cycle?
8 years. Will be an 8-year cycle.
My understanding is there's state legislation that requires HCD to review our ability to meet our RENA numbers after only 4 years. So we'll be needing another
Yeah, potentially, depending on how this falls, we'll either need to do this again in 4 years, or we'll need to do it again in 8 years. It's going to be one of the two. And I've heard that there's legislation revising it both ways potentially. But as you know, Mayor, the state's process has been quite daunting as it pertains to state and local housing.
Passed like 60 new laws related to housing in the last 4 or 5 years. Is that it? Okay, is there any comment from the public?
So we have no comments for the public, Mayor.
Any more questions from the council?
I'll make a second that.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Obaji, seconded by Councilmember Nierenheim. Any objections? Okay, so ordered. Next up, item H16, Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brand. So I pulled this. So this is I just want to give kind of an overview if people understand, especially in District 1, this hits us really hard in South Redondo. This is a house that's going under what's called the Mills Act, and they're preserving the house in historic quality, and they're getting a significant reduction on their property tax bill. And we have a long list, and I believe the last time we updated it was in the 1992, 96, or was it 80? 86?
Well, the original was in the late 80s, and I think we had an update in, 86. Okay. Kind of a review in 95 or 92. Yeah.
Mid-90s.
Mid-90s, yeah, review. So this house originally had a grade of B, and there are multiple different grades, and I guess they don't do grades anymore, and on our budget this year, we have a request for $175,000 to review this entire long list. So that will include, looking at houses like this and new houses, old houses.
Yeah.
If you've never seen this old craftsman style house, it's on Elvira Street, 700 block. It's a gorgeous house, and this family has worked extremely hard to preserve the house, build an ADU in the back, and keep the open space in the back and front yards. And this is really what creates the historical aspect of Redondo and South Redondo. I know our Preservation Commission looked at this. There was discussion from the assessor's office a few weeks ago, I want to say. He came down and talked about the process. Very interesting. So I wanted to bring this attention to the public that, especially for people that have historic homes. And do you remember how much of a price reduction in their property taxes they get?
Yeah, it goes down to approximately 60%. So they get a 40% reduction. Correct.
Okay. So yeah, anyone has an older house, and so actually, one last question to follow up on this: if the next owner buys this house, or let's say two owners down buys this house, and they want to demolish this house, do they have to pay the back taxes on that? How does that work?
I believe there is a catch-up provision that is required depending on how long they wait and how long the agreement has been in place. There's a sliding scale of repayment depending on the length of actual preservation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Any questions?
I have,
Go ahead.
so the flip side of that, and I agree with everything you just said, it's a wonderful program. They do get a break in their taxes. It helps preserve the history. But in that 1986 report, they basically drove down the street and said, yeah, that could be potentially historical. And then they didn't tell anybody that their house was on this list. There's a whole bunch of people on that list that don't have any tax benefit whatsoever, and they don't find out they're on this list until they go to sell the house. So this definitely needs to be reviewed because that's not fair to anyone that isn't at least made aware that they're on this list, so that they can either A, pursue the Mills Act and continue to move up that rating, or they can get themselves removed off this list if there's no intention on that. So I'm really glad that we're going to review how this list is made, and because there's a lot of there's a flip side to that positivity. So yeah.
Just to make sure we're clear, just because you're on that list doesn't mean you automatically jump to the Mills Act.
Correct.
Right.
That's what I mean.
Right.
And so, but it hinders people from being able to sell at the value that they're at. So that's the problem, is they're not getting any benefit. They're on this list, and the way they were put on this list is, I feel, unfair.
And that happened recently, right?
It's happened 2 or 3 times that we've had. Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Any comment from the public?
No comment for the Zoom or e-comments.
I remember years ago, myself and another council member were trying to redo this grading. God, this was like at least 6 years ago. And a nice lady volunteered to come down and do it for free. Of course, basically we didn't move forward. We should have. I mean, Jesus, it's been 30, how many years is it?
Yeah, almost, yeah.
6 years, yeah.
So,
Okay, but it is on our, one of our decision packages to fund a new rating for the entire city.
We'll be talking about that a little bit later.
And notify people.
Yeah, and notify them. That at least you can do.
I'll make a motion to approve item H 14.
Second.
16.
16, sorry.
Okay, there's a
Numbers
motion
all screwed up today.
and a second. Any objections? Okay, so ordered. All right, next up is public participation on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for public to speak about anything that's not on the agenda. Everybody's got 3 minutes. Council is not allowed to respond because, this has to be properly agendized for us to have a discussion about it. But we're here to listen, and at the end of the meeting, any council member can ask for it to be agendized. So you gotta be careful because we're in budget season. So a lot of times people come and start speaking under non-agenda items about a budget item. And, I gotta stop them because, well, that's on the agenda. So I'll speak about that when we get to the budget item. Just fair warning, because that happens a lot. Because everything is tied to the budget. It's hard to talk about something that doesn't have anything to do with the budget. But so first card I have is Pilar DiNardo, and after Pilar is Desiree Galassi. So Pilar.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. So my name is Pilar DiNardo. Let me know when so I want to start, good evening. I want to start with a friend of mine telling me that lived in Colombia during
Hey, Pilar,
time.
you gotta speak to the council. Yeah.
Oh, to you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And she said that during her time in Colombia, she felt the safest at school. And unfortunately, we can't say that to our children here in America. I met this wonderful lady here from Sandy Hook Elementary, a survivor. And we can't, we need to do something about it. And every parent in America, no matter who you are, you worry about your child's safety at school. And every drop-off is a heartache, and everybody can relate. And some of you might think, oh, that's not going to happen here in Redondo Beach, but you just don't know. We don't know. And we need to be proactive rather than reactive. We need to start thinking about this. We need to start a conversation because our kids' lives are our priority. And your agenda is very recreational. Wonderful about your beautifying the elderly center or the pickleball nets, which is great, but what are our priorities? Our priorities are our schools safety. Because we can't worry about Washington, D.C. Like, they have their stuff, they can't figure it out. So we need to worry about our community. What is our community doing for the safety of our schools? So I am here asking to assign a police officer to each school in the district during school hours. And this was an idea that I got from a police officer. After what happened in Texas, Redondo Beach police send, police to the schools. And I stopped to say thank you to one of them, and he suggested it. And I think this is a great idea to have police officers stationed during school hours. I want to start this dialogue. We need to do something. We need to protect our children. We need to protect our community. We need to keep our community safe. And we need to start talking about this, because if we don't, then nothing is going to get done. And I want to be pioneer. Like, let's do this. Let's talk about it. Let's protect our children, because they're the future of our community. So my time is up.
Thank you, Pilar. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the flyer. Okay, next up is Desiree Galassi, and the last card so far is from Roger Carlson. So Desiree and then Roger, and you don't have to have turned in a card if you want to come down and
Do
speak.
you have more?
No, I have one for myself.
Okay.
You can take that one.
We'll copy it.
Motion to receive and file.
Hi there. Just a point of clarification. We're not a survivor family. We lived in Newtown at the time. My boys were actually in lockdown at the high school. And that this is a conversation that I'm going to come back and have with you. But I'm not prepared to speak on that tonight.
Okay, there's a motion to receive and file in a second.
Yeah.
Any objection? Okay, so go ahead, Desiree.
Hi there. Diversifying our portfolio of offerings makes us a vibrant and modern city, and I really believe that it's worth the struggle. I'm here to ask you to reevaluate the short-term and also long-term solutions for pickleball. Alta Vista is a viable and necessary solution until a freestanding pickleball facility can become a reality. Here's why. Usage data shows that utilizing one tennis court for 2 to 3 times a week, strictly for pickleball, leaves more than sufficient hours left over for tennis. That's what you have coming around in front of you right now. Alta Vista has lights for nighttime play, which is great for working folks. Staffed drop-in and reservation play is key to ensuring equity and preventing one group or another from monopolizing courts. And, there's kind of an unspoken hierarchy of which group have the courts, the rogue courts that are happening in Redondo Beach. So this is a good thing that would be, prevented at Alta Vista. Parking is better. There's fencing to contain the balls. It creates an opportunity for Alta Vista kids to come and play with their family after school because it's right there. It's a low-cost and immediate solution. It would be easy to collect data so we can see how the Alta Vista site is working to inform our other pickleball opportunities, right? And there are many successful situations that are going on. Here's one, right? So take a look at West End Racket. They took one of their tennis courts and converted it to 4 pickleball courts. It's directly adjacent to their tennis courts. And it's only separated by a waist-high net. They play tennis, they come over, they play pickleball, they jump over and they go play tennis. It's working. And it's only 100 feet away from residences. It's unbelievable. I think Alta Vista pickleball courts would actually be much further apart. In terms of a long-term solution, we already know about the aviation park viability, but let's take a look at also the Ruby's parking lot, because it's so centrally located. We've got restaurants, we've got hotels, we've got the Bay Club down the street, and the bike path. It would be another wonderful situation. So let's make Redondo another hot place to play, another hot city for pickleball. And I ask you to please reconsider Alta Vista. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Way to skirt the budget. Okay, Roger Carlson.
Need a budget.
Sorry?
I'll go under budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who'd like to speak under non-agenda items? You got 3 minutes. Just introduce yourself, say where you're from, that's all.
Wow. My name is Michael Lee Cheng. It's a pleasure to see everyone. I attend Redondo Union High School, and I'm part of the graduating class of 2022. And I just wanted to add comments to the idea of adding police officers onto campuses in the district, because at the high school, we're lucky to have the police station right there. You know, we have officers on the site pretty frequently, and sometimes they're just patrolling with the other admins in the student union right in front of the cafeteria in student view. And in my personal opinion, I feel like to introduce officers to every campus creates a more hostile environment. As we've seen at my high school, it took 3 officers to subdue one high school student who threw a Gatorade bottle. It took 3 officers to subdue a single high school student, and they handcuffed him and took him away. Yeah, I just think it opens the door to excessive amounts of force, because this implies that this neighborhood could have a shooting any minute. And I know we can't predict that, but I don't think the solution is to introduce more guns onto campuses. Maybe, it's an idea to station more officers around school, or, have easier access to police stations closer to campuses. But to introduce officers directly to campuses, I feel that it creates a hostile environment that could, open the door to excessive force, and some may even argue racial profiling. So, thank you.
Congratulations on graduating. Thank you for everything you've done for the city. It's one active high school student. Lucky to have. Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to come and speak under non-agenda items for 3 minutes? All right, not seeing any takers. That'll move us on to item N1.
Before you.
Actually, I have to do the.
I'm sorry, do you have
Zoom.
online comments?
Yes.
Great.
So Kim Isaac.
Hi, thank you. I actually wanted to talk about police in schools as well. I am completely opposed to having police in schools. If we look back first of all, they don't prevent mass shootings, never have. We just had Uvalde, the police, I don't know how many of them were outside. They stood outside those classroom doors and stood there while those kids were massacred. They did nothing. A mother went in and got her kids out. The police went and got their own kids out, but left the other kids there to be slaughtered. So, and even in situations where it's not like Uvalde, there are police nearby. And there has never been in Florida, the one security guard ran. So there has not been police, an instance where they have stopped a mass shooting. What has happened since Sandy Hook and Columbine has been an increase in Black and brown students being criminalized. That is what has gone up. A child throwing a Gatorade bottle should not be arrested. Those types of things, regular things that when I was a child, they were just part of being a teenager. Was it disruptive to a classroom? Sure. Should they have a punishment? Sure. Should they go to jail? Arrested? Absolutely not. We have turned our children into criminals. The Black and brown kids it's a school to prison pipeline, and that's where it starts, with police at schools. I don't want my child, who is now graduating, I don't want my child ever, or I don't want any children to be in school with more guns. I don't want them to think that's normal. I don't want them to think that if there's a problem, I run to the police, because the police are not always kind to Black and brown people. And if you look at what's happened around the country, innocent people being killed, there's a justice system for a reason. And killing someone upon sight is not a justice or jury. The police are not. And that's what's happening. And I agree with the wonderful young adult who just spoke, and that it does create racial profiling. It does create a hostile environment. My child felt with the police on school, he felt there were many times where he felt like they're watching him. He was goofing off with his friend, and they're like, you stop that. They were goofing off. They weren't fighting. They weren't doing anything. It's like they just immediately go to the Black kids as if they are doing something other than being teenage boys. And I completely disagree with more police. It does not make kids safe. It never has. Look at the history. It is not something that we should ever be considering. What we should be considering are other ways to make them safe. Since we can't get the Congress to do better background checks, there are other things that we can do. But putting more police with guns, no.
Okay, thank you.
Our next person is William, I don't know how to say his last name, but go ahead, William.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I want to also comment on the idea and suggestion of bringing more police onto Redondo Beach school campuses. I'm the father of 3 small children, 2 of whom attend Jefferson at the moment, and will continue ideally through all Redondo schools, which we love. I echo Kim Isaacs' sentiment. I echo the graduating senior sentiments. As a teacher in South Los Angeles, I know for a fact, having taught for 19 years, students do not feel safer with police on campus. The students at my school do not feel safer with police on campus. If anything, they feel more threatened. What they feel safer around is trusted adults. So I would urge the city to make decisions to put more trusted adults, counselors, social workers, teachers, educators, trusted adults that students work with that do not have weapons on them on the campus. Earlier this week, because of all the staff shortages, I had to help out our administration, and I put a walkie-talkie on my belt. And I had multiple students look at me differently and ask, "Oh, Mr. H, you the man now? You coming after us now?" From a walkie-talkie, just from taking on the position of admin or security on our campus. Imagine what it's like if they are armed with weapons. Students do not need police on campus. Police do not prevent crimes from happening. They will not prevent mass shootings as a knee-jerk reaction. We need smarter gun legislation. We need more trusted adults on campus. We need more people who are trained in dealing with children, teenagers, young children, and their emotional problems. We do not need more weapons on campus. Most times in school shootings, the shooter is connected to the school. And so again, you're asking now armed police officers to be there to fire on community members. There are other solutions to it. The police on campus will not keep our students safer. I do not want them on the campus where my children are in elementary school. I do not want them on the campus where my children go to middle school. I do not want them on the campus where my children go to high school. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next person is Jen Araki.
Hello. My name is Jen Morawaki. I have 2 kids in the district, one at Adams and one at the high school. I also want to talk about the kids in, school resource officers or police on campus. I definitely do not want that around my children. Uvalde has kind of brought to light a really, really harsh reality. And that is that the police are not required. They have no constitutional duty to protect a person from harm. The Supreme Court ruled that in 2005. So you just have police on campus that are looking to justify their job. And they do things like handcuff a child for throwing a Gatorade bottle. Or we've seen school resource officers on video dragging an autistic child down a hallway, an 11-year-old. You know, you have kids being just terrorized. And as it is, it's a difficult relationship between kids of color and police. And introducing police into a school does not foster any type of, any type of positive reinforcement for the child. And so I think that, if there's any funding that's available, I echo what the last speaker said, that we do need more trusted adults. We need more adults that kids can go to when there are concerns. And we need more trusted adults to help support the different types of students that we have on campus. But definitely, the one thing that I was looking up, and I found this article that was published, Hamline University, which is in Minnesota, published in the JAMA Network, an article where they looked at every school shooting from K through 12 over 40 years, from 1980 to 2019. And they found that besides the obvious presence of an assault rifle, an armed police officer on campus made it 3 times more likely for people to be killed. And so I would just hope that we could have more creative solutions to this than making our schools look like a military zone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more, Eleanor?
Okay, I don't see any more on Zoom. Vicki, do we have any e-comments?
We have an e-comment that was submitted late for item F9, and they also entered into under non-agenda. So I'm going to leave that up to the council if they want me to read it.
I think we already voted on F9. Oh, it was, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
And it disappeared. There it is. Okay, submitted by James Crawford. Mayor and council, read a story in social media about a costly mistake the city council may be making regarding agenda item F9 on tonight's city council agenda. I ask that the council not appeal the latest judge's denial to dismiss as seen in the recent 27-page scathing ruling from the judge. There was a URL that's provided within that comment. Anyone reading this ruling can see RBPD is in big trouble, and it's not a matter of winning or losing, but how many millions the family will be paid. It should be noted the firm the city attorney has selected is famous, as they just lost an $85 million wrongful death lawsuit against the sheriffs in Santee, California, another URL. The council has 3 choices before it tonight. 1, appeal the latest ruling that will amount to only delaying the case by years and rack up millions more in legal expenses we will have to pay until we ultimately lose in court. This defense will be the same firm that just lost an $85 million lawsuit. Number 2, let the case go to trial as scheduled in August of this year. Number 3, work on a settlement with the family so they and our city can move on. Option 1 should be avoided as it only benefits City Attorney Webb and outgoing Police Chief Keith Kaufman. The millions that will eventually be paid to the family for the RBPD's actions will not hit the books for years after both leave their positions. That way they get off scot-free. Pass the blame on to the new police chief and the city council in office when the judgment is paid. As the years drag on, we will also accumulate millions more in legal expenses. Options 2 or 3 make the most sense, as they will not forestall the inevitable. It will be in the best option for both the city and family that has been the victim in this tragedy. That concludes comments on non-agenda items.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for all the comments, everyone. Next up is item N1, discussion and possible action regarding a waterfront education facility and programming concept titled Ocean Encounter Approval of the concept and direction to staff to prepare draft plans, agreements, and other facility implementation documents. So with that, I guess we'll turn turn it over to you, Mike.
Yeah, I think I'm going to kick that one off for us tonight. A much lighter and more positive and exciting discussion point than what we just heard. We have with us tonight Tom Grimm, who is the team leader for this very unique proposal. As the council is aware, we have been working with a consultant and the community to develop a King Harbor Amenities Master Plan. We concluded our final public outreach meeting here last week. And we were pleased to see another 200 attendees participate in that, both in person and online. But what we've learned through the process, and we are now just preparing the draft plan and bringing that forward to the Harbor Commission and City Council here in the next few months, is that the community and the working group that's been part of the development of that plan have resoundingly supported the notion of the installation of a waterfront educational center at what is currently the Joe's Crab Shack site. That is quite exciting. In fact, it's a site that we wholly control as a city. We have a very short-term lease with the current tenant, and it remains in really the city's absolute control. Tom and his team have prepared a very unique proposal for an educational facility in our waterfront. He has among his group members a number of technical experts in the areas of medicine, children's health, nutrition, oceanography, marine science, restoration of various habitats, restoration of aquaculture, sustainable eating, and Tom himself, I think, is a bit of an agrarian by trade. Just a unique team that has come together to propose a concept here in Redondo Beach that I think potentially could be quite world-class and could be a cornerstone potentially for revitalization of our waterfront. And it works very well with our proposed King Harbor amenities plan. So I'd like to introduce Tom to have him provide you a presentation. The Harbor Commission received a version of this presentation back in April, was very supportive of the concept, had some suggestions that Tom will speak to and Greg can speak to later. But this is a unique opportunity for us as a community. We have received significant input that suggests this is something we should explore, and we're certainly recommending strongly tonight that we proceed with this potential concept. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tom, and Greg's going to handle the PowerPoint.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate your introduction, and thank to members of the City Council, and particularly those from the Harbor Commission and others representing the city who came down to my farm. I have a farm in Carlsbad. It was started as a research project in 1952 and became a very important part of the culture and the life of the city of Carlsbad, where we grow oysters and mussels and culinary seaweeds. And we also do a lot of restoration work, as Mike pointed out. Most recently, we donated about $250,000 worth of oyster shells and equipment to the Navy SEALs and the folks at Camp Pendleton for restoring a lot of the habitat area where some of the endangered shorebirds like the snowy plover and least tern use oyster shells in their nesting materials. We've also done restoration work in the San Diego Bay National Wildlife Refuge and Newport Beach Back Bay. So we're quite involved with habitat restoration, as you point out. So aquaculture is part of what we do. We're also involved with the eelgrass meadow restoration, and we'll be soon doing an kelp forest restoration area as well. So let's go ahead with some of these presentations. This is part of my team, and it does include a lot of family members. Andrew is my son, who's a pediatric gastroenterologist and child nutrition expert, and a PhD in molecular genetics, who's quite a bit involved with the crisis of childhood obesity in the United States, which is truly an epidemic. And his sister, Erica, right below, is in emergency medicine, and also conservation medicine, who practices up in the Palo Alto area. We have people who are involved with aquaculture, going on a list from around the world. Mike Zaida and his team, he's at USC, who has developed what amounts to some of the technology that has generated over $1 billion of revenue for interactive media. Bonnie Rogers was head of the Army Corps of Engineers aquaculture policy in Southern California, is now part of our team. Gordon Sachs, also an MD, PhD in integrative medicine at UC San Diego Medical School, and is involved with teaching better dietary practices for children and young people about how to incorporate foods as a way of not just lifestyle, but also for healing a lot of medical issues. My wife, Catherine Schubel, is, along with her father, Jerry Schubel, who ran the Aquarium of the Pacific for 15 years. Both are oceanographers and quite involved with both habitat restoration, but particularly education. She's a professor at Johns Hopkins, but also teaches at local community colleges like Miracosta and the like. So very involved with education, really from K through postdoctorate work. Others, like Witold Ostrenko, helped create one of the largest science centers in the United States, I think the fourth or fifth largest in Tampa. And he's a very dear friend, worked with him for a number of years. But he's created a project there, about $180 million facility, which he raised the money for, and is very active in this particular concept and the idea that he could support what we do here with funding, which is one of the questions that's been raised. Others involved with this include the top marine drone experts in the world. Belinda Zhang, who used to be the head of R&D for Foxconn, which builds the iPhone, and she was the head of that, and has partnered with us on developing marine drones, which we want to have at the training center here in Redondo Beach. And others include Robert Pomeroy, also a physical and organic chemist who does a very big program in Chula Vista with underserved communities and getting them prepared for competitive entrance to prestigious universities from very under-resourced communities. So a very remarkable group of people that are coming together who believe in this concept for Redondo Beach, as do I. I came to know Redondo Beach by one of the major patrons of the Aquarium Pacific, Dr. Allen Ginsberg, who's a business leader in Redondo Beach, who's involved in investing in many things, including the King Harbor Marina, who said Redondo Beach and their harbor is a remarkable venue for doing things, including ocean experiential learning opportunities. And he said, let's look at some of those ideas. And after meeting a lot of the people in this community, I realized how perfect that is. And of course, a lot of the high tech that we're talking about, augmented reality, the center for that technology in the world is Los Angeles, California, as it is with media. So the resources locally to do something in Redondo Beach is quite unique. In addition to the marine resources you have here. Let's go to the next if you could. So locally, I had the pleasure of spending a few hours with Julie Cole, who's pioneered the waterfront education program here for more than 8 years. Brilliant work, really remarkable in terms of the experiential work and the leadership that she's led with Linda Chilton from USC Sea Grant. We work a lot with USC, and Maria Madrigal, who's involved with STEM education outreach, resides in Compton. But the local talents in Redondo Beach are amazing. And their heritage of working with young kids of disadvantaged areas is really important. Let's go ahead with some of the images itself. When we look at the harbor hub, the Seaside Lagoon plan that was the process of being developed, the area that I've circled there, number 7, where currently the Joe's Crab Shack site is, would be where we would like to have this Ocean Encounters facility be located. You are all familiar with this, much more than me, I suppose, in many ways. But that's a site that it really lends itself well to the kind of concepts we're going to talk about today. Go ahead with this. So you're all familiar with this site from different perspectives. This is Google Earth from different angles, from above and from a perspective view and from a profile view of what that facility is in its relationship to the harbor. The Ocean Encounter concept that we put together would be a nonprofit. So there's no economic incentive on the part of our team to generate revenue that would enrich the people who are collaborating with us, who are all volunteers to this effort, but remarkable people who believe in the idea of both deepening children and people's connection to the ocean. A lot of the people in Redondo Beach, which may sound amazing to many of you here, or the city of Los Angeles, never go to the ocean, or very little, especially in underserved communities. And part of the idea here that Ginsberg and others have talked about is we got to get kids connected to the ocean, particularly those who have transportation issues or don't have a general tradition of utilizing ocean resources. But the other thing that the folks we're working on is on this is to do with the health of how you can improve your diet with seafood that affects and improves intellectual development and heart health as well. So the design that I sketched up, these are just rough sketches that I did, is to have a low-profile structure that is modular, that would fit within the requirements of the Coastal Commission, which I've had the pleasure of working with, and maybe many of you have as well. But when we got our permit for our farm, we got unanimous support, endorsement from them. So you do understand how onerous some of those processes can be. The concept of Ocean Encounter would have these general areas that include an aquaculture area, an aquaponics area that's tied to a studio kitchen, augmented reality, conferences, ocean culture programming, and of course, ocean experiential activities such as Julie Cole and her team and others that we are involved with. I've been involved as an interpretive naturalist dealing with habitat restoration for 30 years. So I'm quite familiar with getting in the ocean, interacting with it, and learning how to both work in harmony with the ocean and discover and explore its secrets. The facility itself, as I said, has these main themed areas. One of the things we want to bring forward in this facility is Pacific Rim cultures that are around both historically here and prehistorically from the native peoples, all the way to, in fact, we're meeting with some of the tribal leaders who are coming to my farm tomorrow from around here that are interested in promoting the traditions and cultural heritage that is part of the coast of California, Southern California. So the augmented reality part, some of you may understand what that is, which is different than virtual reality. The idea in this part of the space that we're talking about, those kelp plants that you see there would be physical objects. These aren't virtual. They're things that simulate what a kelp forest would be like if you could walk through it. And behind it is a video wall. So these things you'll be able to see and walk through without any headsets on. But let's take a look at one of our collaborators in this, which is Netflix, which has a lot of media here, which we're going to go ahead and click that again. And then you'll see what, there we go. This is the kind of media that would be streaming to simulate show what a kelp forest is like when you're walking through that space and feeling like you're at that space. And it can also include coral reefs. It can include the deep pelagic ocean environment. And it can go to both migratory marine life that is quite popular, or you could shrink yourself, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kid, now you're the size of a diatom or some kind of microalgae. So the nice thing about augmented reality is that students can connect with this kind of media in their classroom or at home or on their iPhone. Coming there and walking through that space is quite amazing, but you also can walk through it and have these animals interact with that. So this is the media streaming. Of course, what's remarkable about Redondo Beach is that it's one of the big corridors for migratory marine life, like we see with these whales that are moving through that space. So I'm going to keep going ahead now to the augmented reality part. Now you can see in these headsets that these people are wearing, we're going to show that augmented reality, how that actually would affect the visitor. Now this original space that I've drawn behind there, again, these are rough sketches, would be based on the current Joe's Crab Shack that would be adaptive reuse. We have a complete plan to rebuild it, but we also looked at the adaptive reuse and see which way we want to phase from one perhaps to the other. So go ahead. So we're going to talk about augmented reality. So you can move ahead there with that. So click it again, if you would, Greg. This is augmented reality. So this is not a video. This is a computer interacting with your movement of your hands or your head, what they call haptics. So as you walk through a space, marine life will react to what you do. It'll flee away, or it'll move, or react, or whatever. But because it has other types of data built into it, when you look at a species, you can find out, well, that's Andrea. This is a sperm whale. And you can identify her by the flukes, or it might be a leatherback, or whatever it might be. As you see these marine things, marine life forms, or other features, like a black smoker, the deep ocean, these are all things that are not accessible to people in real lifetimes, I mean, with rare exceptions. But with this thing, you can go to Redondo Beach and actually have that experience in a visceral way. Okay, let's keep going. So here, let's stop here for a moment. This is also not just augmented or virtual reality, it's reality. So this is a picture of an actual kelp forest, something we want to restore in Redondo Beach, which had massive kelp forests here and otters and amazing diverse life, which does not exist here like it once did, but we are eager to restore it. That type of aquaculture, there's a lot of funding in the state of California for that kind of work today. And we want to do that and engage people so people can, when they put those headsets on, they can also be streaming marine drones that are exploring Redondo Beach. Let's keep going with this if we could. So whether you're doing things like a coral reef restoration or even there's also reefs and structures off of the jackets of the offshore oil rigs. But my wife teaches her classes for Johns Hopkins in the Bahamas and Hawaii and Bermuda and so forth. And so the students who are in Redondo Beach can connect with places around the world doing habitat restoration as well as what they can do right here. So the idea behind all this is direct connections. And you can see on this image up here, students in the schools in Redondo Beach would have direct access to this. And all of a sudden they feel like they have an avatar and they're walking into these kelp forests in real time. And it can be quite astonishing in terms of how much that affects their mindset about what's really there. So this is one of our partners. This is Belinda Zhang, as I mentioned, who started what now is the largest consumer marine drone in the world, a company called QC5 Fish, which we are a partner with. And let's look at, I'm going to go through this real quickly. Go ahead, Greg. This is some of the tech behind it. Let's go ahead. So here's a marine drone clip, if we could show that. So this is an area off of Qingdao, China, where we have an ocean farm also. But these little drones have a cable. And so what we would want to do is have students in Redondo Beach go and perhaps use that seaside lagoon to learn how to operate these things. So before you bring these out in the ocean, you got to try them out and learn how they work. The headsets, when you put them on, make you essentially a fish. So you're moving around like these people are, and they are, wherever they look, that's where the drone goes. So it's very simple. It's in many respects simpler to use than an aerial drone. So when you're there and you're looking at this, if you're a student or if you're just taking part in this thing, what you see can also be on the computers of your friends or your classmates in school, or a big video wall at the Ocean Encounter Center. So there's parts of these tools will also help with the city of Redondo Beach when it looks at taking advantage of the Build Back Better infrastructure funds, which is almost $1 trillion, where you're looking at habitat and shoreline protection, and augmented reality is a big part of basically scenario planning for cities. So these kinds of technologies have a lot of research and civic uses and land planning and water planning use and ocean exploration and recreation. Lots of stuff. And Redondo Beach can be the leading center for marine drone training in the United States, be the #1 center, because we're the #1 group that does marine drones like this in the United States. Let's keep going. So eelgrass meadows is another thing that we do and are actively doing. When we started our little farm down in Carlsbad, there was almost no eelgrass, and now it's incredibly rich with this important seagrass that's sequestering carbon. The eelgrass in the US sequesters more sugar underneath their ground than all the soft drinks consumed in the United States combined. Just eelgrass. It's a weird thing they just recently discovered. Let's keep going. And of course, we talked about coral reef restoration work. These are all things that are about not just discovering things as a passive viewer, and I appreciate what they do with the Caribbean Pacific, I said, because our family's been involved with that for many years, but doing things, planting things, protecting things, restoring things, and exploring them with new tools. So that's the idea. And this also includes coastal lagoon restoration, as I said, which are quite involved with that. And again, we would want to do the training so young people who want to get into those fields can come to Redondo Beach and learn about it, not just the local residents, but more broadly throughout this area here. So we use these interactive visualizations for exploring marine habitats and for inspiring and engaging the next generation of ocean explorers, or just people who want to appreciate and get involved with the ocean environment. Now, one of the other parts about this initiative is healthy eating. That's why we have a lot of physicians who are involved with nutrition and health. And we want to teach people, particularly young people, how to eat more healthy. And as it turns out, seafood is an important part of the diet in terms of brain development. In gestation, people who've had more omega-3s in their diet have a significant advantage over those who don't have in their diet in terms of their brain development and their cognitive processes. So kids come to the center and they will be, and other people, like it could be even a Sur La Table or Williams-Sonoma kind of little mini kitchen that's not a restaurant. It's a studio kitchen where we broadcast how to prepare food, particularly seafood, that's healthy, and things that are grown inside these tanks we'll have in the Ocean Encounter, like this rock scallop. Those little blue dots, by the way, on the rim of that rock scallop are their eyes. It's quite an amazing thing which we grow And it's a native species to California that we've been growing, and the only farm that grows those in the world. We want to actually grow that here in Redondo Beach. And then not just grow it, but occasionally include it on a dinner plate. And so that'd be a unique thing to only find in this particular area. The idea of preparing food would be not just for, again, children, that's an emphasis, but it's for everybody who wants to learn how to do that. So we'd have guest chefs come in, but it's a broadcast studio. So this means that some of these top chefs that one would see on television, we've had many chefs come to our farm, they cook things. They said, let's do a studio kitchen somewhere. And when I went to Redondo Beach, I said, this is the place to do this. This is where all the people in the media are, and where you could stage a broadcast program that can generate meaningful revenue. But it's also a place where kids learn the physics, the properties of material science, which is part of my background. But the idea is it's cooking, but cooking has a lot of physics and other things behind it. That's also a place for the joy of creating and cooking. I'm not personally a chef. I'm going to be full disclosure. My family's Norwegian, and it's not a lot of Norwegian restaurants because they cook Norwegian food. You know? It's not like some of the amazing foods they have in some of these restaurants you find around here. So in an aquaponics garden we would have there, you can see raised grow beds. And we built models like this, where you're not crawling around on your knees. They're on a waist height. You can harvest butter lettuce or arugula or whatever it might be. And those circular tanks behind there are full of steelhead salmon. So you have all the ingredients, the salmon, in this case when they're young, they're anadromous fish. They start as freshwater. When they're exposed to saltwater, they turn into salmon. But more like what you'd be familiar with. But in that state, those nutrients that they produce, which is our waste products, the biosolids, are degassed and they're used to power fuel cells. And the other nutrients are like the nitrites, become nitrates with the different bacteria that allow them to be absorbed by these plants. So this is all a complete kind of a version of an ecosystem that is recreated here for producing food at a high intensity level. Go ahead. So the idea here is rather than a botanic garden that's full of all kinds of beautiful tropical flowers, which are beautiful, this is all about food. This is a place where you can graze in the garden that we would have there and teach people how to produce these kinds of food more sustainably. So these kind of aquaponic systems use 4% of the water used by traditional farming. Most of the water you put into plants in the farm go down into the whatever is below there, might be an aquifer, might not be, but you lose that water. Whereas here, the water is retained. There's no soil. It just flows through there, and it provides the nutrient-rich waters that are from the fish. Okay? So the studio kitchen is one big concept which we're excited about, like you see here. But it's something that we would engage the local restaurants. We work, one of our customers for our farm is Blue Water Grill, and provided the shellfish and seafood for their owner's own wedding. Let's keep going. So this is skip this one here. I'm gonna move on to the next one. So that's basically, I'm gonna go through a couple other slides if I could pass. I think there might be something here. This is one thing I added at the end when I was talking to Dr. Schubel, that he did a program about how VR, virtual reality, and AR are used by cities for scenario planning, for shoreline protection, restoration work that makes you more competitive in getting grants to do shoreline protection. And so this is cities that use augmented reality for scenario planning, which include Miami, San Francisco, New York, Santa Cruz, you name it, New Orleans, and Redondo Beach, right? We could use those tools here to give you the very strong competitive advantage when you're looking at future planning. Let's anything else? Yeah, these are all kind of that same thing. I'm going to kind of wrap it up here. We can just kind of close this down. I can see more scenario. This is from Stanford, part of their workshop. And so there's lots of tools like this that aren't just for ocean encounter program, but things that the city manager, Mike and Bill Brandt and his team, his staff would say, you know, we want to see what the future would hold based on different scenarios of how quickly sea level and other features would be responding to additional wave energy and all those kinds of things. I think that may be it. Greg? Yeah, let's just skip the rest of it. So the thing is, will tell you that I'm enthralled with everybody I've met with this amazing city of Redondo Beach. I've had success in raising some money. I did work on a project with Nelson Mandela and National Geographic and Morgan Freeman in generating money for a transnational conservation area, and with other projects that bring together some remarkable people around a common vision for conservation and education. The number of organizations that would be attracted to such an event or facility would include a lot of family foundations, like the Packard Foundation, the Walton Foundation, and the Eric and Wendy Schmidt, who was the CEO of Google, who people I've had a chance to meet with, and others that we talked about, local business leaders, love these concepts because it is an immersive educational program, but also had some real stick to your ribs, literally, like the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that specifically targets the health and nutrition of kids in inner cities, or what they call food deserts, where they're getting most of their food from fast food and, I don't know, these convenience stores like 7-Eleven, and that's not really where you're gonna find your best food. So we think that coming to Redondo Beach to eat healthier, to make a healthier ocean, we talked about the health of people, health of the place they live, and health of the planet they share. This is something that when I talked with the amazing Julie Cole, shares those passions. There's other concepts we talked about for a few hours recently, lots of ideas about the experiential components to it. But I think these are ideas, and it's something that if it's of interest to the city to pursue with our team and some of the local folks who we would be working with, we'd be delighted to do that. But I don't have any special personal agenda other than I think this is the greatest place you could possibly do this project. I know when I met with Mayor Brandt and with Mike Wazansky, I've gotten a lot of the ideas for what we're proposing here. And some of the ideas that I talked about, I said, Tom, this is too much. So we kind of made it, I mean, it seems like a lot, but it was a lot bigger than that. So we're still honing it down, but we won't really shape it more without a lot of input from the people from the Harbor Commission, from the city team leadership, from the political leadership, to take something the city has to own this in a sense. It's not just a nonprofit, but the city has to say, this is what we're all about as a city. We want to position Redondo Beach, be the leader in ocean experiential learning, certainly in the United States, if not the world. And so these technologies that I'm talking about are people who are top in their field in the country, if not the world, who think this is a really cool project. And I'm really grateful for Mayor Brandt for inviting me, for Mike, for Greg, for Elizabeth, for the people I've had a chance to work with, and the Harbor Commission, Roger, and others who've been supportive of some of these ideas and contributed to them. So these are not just coming out of my head, out of the ether. They're interacting with a lot of very smart people who are interested in what we can do, especially in Redondo Beach, as it envisions the waterfront master plan. I did talk talk with the SWA group, who thought, fits like a glove with our plan. We love this thing. But again, I'm a collaborator. That's why I have a lot of very smart people. I guess I call myself a talent scout, trying to find people who are smarter than me. Unfortunately, my kids are a lot smarter than me. But we get a lot of people who are like Julie, who add to the mix of this. So I thank you again, Mayor, Mike, and city council members. So I'll stand here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Tom. You've done quite a lot of work on this, uncompensated, I might add. It's really kind of started with Dr. Allen Ginsberg, frankly, when he, came to us about water quality in King Harbor, and he brought you up. Told me you got to go meet with Tom Grimm down at the Carlsbad Aqua Farms, and took me about a month and a half to get down there, but I jumped in the car, went down there and saw your whole thing. It's amazing. And then I had another trip with our city manager, Mike Wazansky, 2 members of the Harbor Commission, Elizabeth House, Councilmember Narenheim, Councilmember Lowenstein, and, heard this kind of whole pitch, saw your research facilities. Extremely, extremely impressive in everything you've done. And it's amazing that this does not exist in Santa Monica Bay. It really, really strikes you when you look at the opportunity and what's going on in many, many other areas, and there's like nothing here in Santa Monica Bay to compare. And some sort of educational facility is extremely popular, as came out of the SWA public visioning. And I was reading an article, Ventura Harbor just wrapped up their public visioning on what they'd like to see on this particular site. Then they ranked the choices from the community about what they know. Number one was an educational facility. So you see it at Dana Point, you see it in a lot of different places where, it becomes a hub of education. And really what was driving me and several others was the idea of bringing kids from disadvantaged communities of color inland. I mean, we're in LA County, there's 10 million people here, 10 million. And the inner city kids just have no exposure to what's going on here on the coast, and they're really not far away from it. I used to tutor kids back in the 90s down at Family Services of LA at Manchester and Normandy. I mean, that was the hood. And I would just go down there and help them learn to read and play basketball with them and teach them about the ocean. And it was just amazing how they didn't even know hardly that it even existed or could get out there. And we chartered a bus one day. I didn't know what we were going to do. We were just going to take them up to Palos Verdes and show them the tide pools. And I mean, for the kids, all we had to do was open the bus doors. And that was it. I mean, they were down the trails and in the tide pools and just totally, totally enthralled. So it's kind of more of I see this augmented reality and other sorts of kind of, I know you say they're not virtual, but they got helmets on and everything. And I mean, we're here, we're right here. And so I often, when people present things, I'm always like, well, is that coastal dependent? Is a pickleball court dependent on being by the coast? A lot of the stuff you're presenting, can be done, doesn't have to be on the coast. But a lot of things you do present absolutely have to be on the coast. So I don't, I haven't been to the Long Beach Aquarium in a long time. I don't know if they're doing that, but it is certainly an opportunity to expose kids, however they need exposing. But my experience with kids is they want to sail the boat. They want to look at the animals and the creatures in the ocean. They want to get in the water. They want to get on the water. And they want to go and actually see the real deal. Thanks to Dr. Ginsburg for introducing you to us. It's a fantastic opportunity. What would we be signing up for by approving this, Mike? It says approval of the concept and direction. So, some of the things, I'm not here to decide whether it's a good place for aquaculture or studio kitchen. It seems like these are just ideas about what could happen. The idea, just having an educational facility is an incredible opportunity. And how the programming washes out, like you talked to Julie Cole or others that are already doing this, they have a lot of interest in how the programming of this unfolds. And what are we be signing up for?
Yeah, that's what we begin to develop more concretely, right? These are great concepts, and what's so impressive about them is they present opportunity for just about every field, right? And they're forward thinking, not backward thinking. One of the frustrations with a lot of educational facilities is to become static almost immediately after they're constructed. This type of educational programming can evolve. It can be interactive with our own environment. You mentioned, the presence and the facility access. Those drones being launched from Redondo Beach and viewed in an interactive way is truly fascinating, and the potential there is enormous. The interactivity with our local schools, as well as potentially inner LA schools that would benefit through partnerships. So much variety there as well. So, and just the sustainable link to all the different elements of this programming, the sky's the limit on what we could ultimately implement. So tonight would be saying, you know what, we're intrigued by this. We want to see an educational facility of this and ilk ultimately constructed in Redondo Beach. We like what Tom and his team bring to that potential and the collaborative nature of it. And you're really saying, in concept, we're approving this and directing us to then work with Tom and his team to develop the next implementation documents. At the end of the day, there's a variety of steps that are going to have to be achieved for us to build this facility. This is something that's going to require a coastal development permit. It's going to require the establishment of a not-for-profit foundation or organization of some sort. It's going to require us working potentially with benefactors to fundraise for the facility, pursue grants, and ultimately develop the most concrete and tangible programming that's going to bring all of those partners to the forefront and actually get them to commit to supporting the actual installation. So, we're at the starting point. A lot of work has gone into this. Tom has developed just a really extraordinary program here in a very short amount of time, but there is a lot of work to do. And what you're really tonight doing is saying, you know what, we love the prospect of this idea. We love the educational facility being sited at the Joe's Crab Shack site, and staff, you know what, we're going to authorize you to work with Tom and his team to develop, how we go about making this a reality.
I want to make, if I may, can I add one comment, Mike?
Yep.
Mayor? This has to do with something that you touched on, Bill, which is the experiential interaction with the ocean itself, which is how I make my living. I mean, we're in the ocean every day. I have actually learned about the ocean from my grandfather building boats as a child. He came from Trondheim, Norway, and it was all about connecting and making things. When my son finished college, before he started medical school, he built a boat at a school where you learn from a guy, Charlie Mayo, whose dad started the Mayo Clinic. But he's a surgeon, but he also is Scandinavian, builds boats. So that's kind of what you do there. But the idea, we want to have people learn how to connect with the ocean. When I talk with Judy about the stuff that she does with sailing, which is a big passion of mine, learning how to sail, learning how to make things that are in the ocean. One of the guys, Skip Pomeroy, who was in our list, builds stand-up paddleboards, but he makes them by growing algae. And the algae you actually can literally grow a paddleboard, which he's done, and it's spawned a company, because people, Surfrider, all these groups say we're environmentally very committed, but in reality, surfboards take 10,000 years to degrade, whereas these take 10 weeks if you plant them. So we look at really some cool technology about exploring the ocean and interacting with it. So I want to leave you with this thought, is that I want to make it really clear that the physical connection with the actual ocean. The drones will help us explore it, provide tools for the city and with the staff. And that'll be unique. It'll be the big marine drone center for this part of the United States. But it's also the idea of connecting kids just to touch and explore the ocean in different ways, tide pools. And we have kids building oyster reefs and all that kind of stuff. So that's part of it. So I want to make sure that people don't think it's all just virtual. It's very much reality. So.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Nils raised his hand. This is working now, you guys, if you want to sign up request to speak, but I'll go with Councilmember Nierenheim, then Councilmember Horvath.
Thank you, Mayor Brand.
I don't know, somehow I have it now, and I saw Nils raise his hand.
Everyone wants to go ahead of me. I'm more than happy.
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. Mr. Grimm, thank you. And thank you for the tour of your facility a few months ago, I guess that was. It was awesome. Learned a lot. I actually took a bunch of photos and showed it on my online community meeting and my in-person community meeting. And people were really impressed. They had some great questions. And, I think the primary question was, is this educational in terms of like why you went down there or where we're going for it, And as we're redesigning the harbor here, reimagining for the long future, I think this would be a unique opportunity for us. The Joe's Crab Shack location, you would essentially demo the entire location and rebuild from scratch?
We were thinking of two things, Councilman Nierenheim. One is that the facility itself, when I first started, I looked at adaptive reuse in the near term, and then as permitting allows, build a larger permanent facility of a scale where, when I've talked with some potential funders, they're saying we want to do something that is a sizable investment, but they want to have something new and it will last for the next 50 years. So the transition is a question for the city as whether or not it can be adaptively reused for short term or not. I think there's possibilities of that. But again, those are things that would have to be part of a discussion with the city manager and staff and everybody as to what the best path is. But I will tell you that, at least from the funding potential places, they want to really put some real money behind a permanent, really beautiful facility that becomes influential over what the larger waterfront development is, something really quite remarkable. And that's something that would take more than repurposing an old restaurant.
Right. So would you have spaces in there for roving items or ability for, like, there was the Shark Lab from UC Long Beach State that came up here and did a presentation a few weeks ago.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, would you see the ability to have extra space for places like that, or roving?
Well, both. I mean, for example, with augmented reality, you just push a button and it's all a shark environment, right? So it's all of about 1 second to do that. But when it comes to some of the areas for tanks and things like that, I think there are already a lot of aquariums. So you don't want to spend all the money on maintaining marine life, but for temporary exhibits on those areas, because a lot of the stuff you can do with sharks or with other species, we could do a lot. Of course, we'd want to do that and have a continually fresh new set of exhibits. One of the things that we are looking at doing is one about steelhead salmon, but there's a guy who started a outdoor sporting goods thing called Patagonia, and he supports trout and salmon projects, and there's a big exhibit about those. So there's ways to get specific major exhibits about those things, and some of which can be transient, some of which will be permanent. It all depends on what the city wants to emphasize.
So part of your program you had in Carlsbad was the oyster farming. And would you be able to see that fitting inside the harbor in Redondo?
No, it's not going to fit in the harbor. What you can do, Councilman Nierenheim, you can have oyster reefs to protect the coastal areas where your attenuating wave energy can cause erosion. You can do those things, but you can't really grow edible things in any marina by virtue of regulations that pertain to public health. But you can do aquaculture, like kelp reforestation. You can grow oysters, you can grow scallops, but you can't grow them for food in a marina. But around the outside, there's places you could do some things that would be aquaculture. Well, we could grow in tanks, we could grow things that would be for food. But there's a lot of, having been with this for many years, I'm very familiar with regulations and so forth, but there's plenty that can be done to have kids learn about the husbandry. We work with USC on developing oysters that are more resilient to ocean acidification, which we're providing to the industry. So there's things that we could do at Redondo Beach are pretty important stuff, but I would say food production in the harbor is not possible. But around there, habitat restoration is where the most money is. I'm talking as a business guy. For habitat restoration, shoreline protection, there are billions of dollars available for those kind of projects in the state of California. That Redondo Beach should be getting that money, at least some of it, by doing those kind of projects. So I also look at, I have to be, I'm a business guy. I'm not an educator like my wife, who's a professor, and all these other folks who are a lot of scientists and doctors. I'm just a simple farmer guy. So I have to have things that have commercial vitality to them, and one of those is habitat restoration, and there's lots and lots of government funding to do that.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Hey, Councilmember Horvath.
I want to say thank you. I thought it was a really interesting presentation, and something that has the potential, I think, to put Redondo on the map in a way that it should be, especially when we have the harbor that has fastest access to open, waters. And we're doing stuff, and Julie's been doing stuff for years. And so the first thing I want to say is that I am supportive of moving forward, but I want to make sure that we do have programs like the Waterfront Education Program. We have the White Sea Bass Program. We have local educational programs that I think are still integral, and I think it would be important to figure out how do we integrate anything into whatever it is you may try to do, so that there is real synergy, and not just on that site per se, right? Because that site would be the location for whatever building and the things that you showed in your architectural diagrams. But I think there's so much possibility to integrate with the pier and the rest of the, the marina and harbor area and the things that are going on, and find a way to create those synergies so that waterfront education is a main partner, an integral part of whatever it is you're doing. And my kids have gone through her program, and, it's amazing. We used to have the Sea Lab here, which, worked with the LA Conservation Corps, and, brought kids in from, inner city and volunteers. And so I just see so much endless possibility, and I just want to make sure that that doesn't get lost in the conversation.
I see that as a central part of what we want to do. That's why we spend hours today talking about how we could best do that. I want to point out that with the White Sea Bass program, we work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Hub SeaWorld Research Institute in sea bass, in their sea bass program, which is a few feet from our farm. And so we work closely with them, and they release 300,000 white sea bass in the lagoon where I work every year. They did, ironically, try to keep the seals from attacking them, so they made these bells and noises to scare the seals and sea lions away when they were releasing them, which worked once, and then it worked like a dinner bell, because wait a minute, they're releasing more, so it didn't work out quite that way.
And then,
but we work with white sea bass restoration projects on a substantial level. So
great, yeah, I just want to make sure that we consider all those. A word of caution, if you will, but when you talk about like a potential rehab of the existing building versus, maybe building out something fresh, I would say we've talked here quite a bit about sea level rise over the years. And that property is, is going to be, we've talked about revetment and everything. And I would say that, instead of rehabbing something and then at some point later having to close it down and rebuild, I would think about how do you create a site that will be functional for decades, if not a century to come, right? Yeah. Just food for thought. And then I had one other thought. It's evading me now. I apologize. But no, in general, I think this is a great pathway to take, and I appreciate the time and the effort that you put into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lawrence.
Thanks, Tom, for the presentation. I'm not going to ask you very many questions because you gave us an incredible tour down in Carlsbad to see what you're doing beyond waterfront education or, ocean education down there. You're doing vaccine production, all kinds of really interesting things and research. But I wanted to ask both, we have both the Harbor Commissioner Chair and Julie here. I wonder if they could step up, if they wouldn't mind, maybe saying a couple words about their involvement or their excitement about this. I hate to put you on the spot, but I thought you're here. You might as well say a word, and give it a shot. So.
For those who don't know me, I'm Julie Call. I'm one of the founders and executive directors of Waterfront Education, active girl in the water, yacht club member, et cetera, et cetera. I know this harbor very well. I live in it, I swim in it. I don't swim in it, but I sail in it. So there are parts of this presentation that make me very excited. I only spent 5 hours with Tom today. He was not able to change his presentation, but we spent a lot of time talking about hands-on STEM in the water education. So I know, although that wasn't presented, I want to believe that he was truthful with me in saying that, yes, that's a path that he wants to go down. What excites me about the interactive, getting people excited, is one of the things that I talk about is how do we get the kid in Nebraska excited about the ocean? And I think that, and I do live stuff with LAUSD, where we are doing stuff live. We have someone in-house, and we're taking a camera and going out in our harbor on a stand-up paddleboard and a sailboat. I think there is a lot of value in that. And I think that he has a team that could get us beyond just California and make those connections, so that if we can get the teacher in Nebraska who loves the ocean to come out here for a week, experience the ocean hands-on, take that back to their classroom in the flyover states and get their kids excited, that makes me super excited. On a local level, what that looks like is very different than what was presented here. What's presented here is kind of like an ocean theater that can be in the harbor, not opposed to that, but water adjacent is something that's very important to what we do, because we are getting those kids from a classroom onto the water, and that's where the magic happens, whether it's with a fishing pole, whether it's in a sailboat, whether it's in a kayak, or it's on the beach. And I think we talk a lot about hands-on in the terms of marine science, because we're surrounded by aquariums. My passion, yes, I like that, but my passion is in the science of the sea. Let's get it to where they are learning and they are doing maker stuff, where they're building the drones, where they're building the underwater robotics, where we're encouraging that type of engineering. That is not really around our area. We're surrounded by fantastic aquariums. And I love the sea life. I love when the dolphins come out to play. But let's talk about what really happens when the waves come in, or what happens with the wind, or the weather, or the fog, or even any of the science, the chemistry. We teach a class that's called Aqua Architects. And it's all about teaching kids the difference between the chemistry and building a habitat for freshwater and for a saltwater aquarium. Not for them to be a big aquarium, but because they love it and they want it in their bedroom and they want to know how to do it. So the more that we can encourage these collaborations, I've got friends with deep pockets, probably not as deep as his friends, but I do know what it takes to educate kids on this water. And everything we do for kids, let me tell you, adults want it. I mean, we have done some things. We do our full moon kayaking. We do a family version and we do an adult version. We have done Friday night fishing happy hour. And we use the local resources as far as renting the charter boats here in our marina. So I think there's a lot of learning opportunity. What I would like to see is that let's build a collaborative group. I talked to him about some of the names that were not on his list. I said, you've got a bunch of great scientists, but I will tell you, there's a disconnect between a scientist and teaching a kid about the ocean, because they're in a lab or they're doing other research, which is super important, and I don't want to dismean it by any means, but getting a kid on the ocean for the first time and getting them over their fear of the ocean and getting them excited, whether it's the first fish or whether the sailboat starts to heel over and they are able to control it and then harness the joy of the ocean. That's where the magic happens. So what I would like to see is a collaboration between what Tom's trying to do and our local nonprofits that have been here for a while. We know this harbor, without a doubt. There's no way Tom's going to come in and know this harbor. For those of us who live here, work here, we're residents here, we teach here. So I think we can have an opportunity to really bring something great together. I have a presentation where I can show the cute kids. Some of you guys know about what we're doing. I think new is good. I think getting into the crab shack sooner rather than later with some of us who are already here can happen within 60 days. Let's figure out what we don't know about that part of the harbor. Each part of the harbor, the water surges differently. The marine life is different. The physics is different. So I would say, as a citizen, as an educator, let's run with this concept, but let's take a step back and identify important local contributors. Tom and I was only able to identify a few people. Myself, Linda Chilton, grew up here, very active. She's a part of USC grants. She's been a mentor. She was active with Sea Lab. Maria Madrigal, there's others. But let's make it a nice collaboration between those who have been here and know the harbor and love the harbor, and those who have maybe access to more, I don't want to say intelligence, but more resources than someone like I would have. So am in supportive of it, but I want to make sure that we as local nonprofits are not squeezed out of the process. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Trying this button here. So when you think of centers for great marine biology worldwide, the best centers for marine biology, you think of La Jolla Canyon, you think of Monterey Bay Aquarium, or you think of Monterey Bay, because of the aquarium, because of the scientists that founded it. Down in La Jolla Canyon, you think of Scripps and the scientists that founded it. This bay is just as cool as La Jolla Canyon or the Monterey Bay. We have every whale species here. This is a pupping ground for every species of shark, including white sharks. The head of the Redondo, sorry.
Could you introduce yourself? I'm sorry.
I got so excited about Santa Monica Bay, I forgot that part. Thank you. I'm Roger Carlson, current chairperson of the Harbor Commission, local resident, boater, all the stuff Julie said, in the water all the time, like her. I apologize for that.
That's all good.
So sorry, I was on a roll, but this bay is as cool as La Jolla or Monterey. We have every species of whale. We have every species of shark. At the head of the canyon, right in front of Vets Park, we have one of the coolest beach dive sites in California, which makes it one of the coolest beach dive sites in the world. There have been papers written saying that's one of the best places to find juvenile giant sea bass, an endangered, mega West Coast species that grows to 500 pounds, a really cool fish to dive with. We have people around Palos Verdes doing kelp restoration now, abalone restoration. They have no public outreach, public face. Occidental College has boats in our harbor. They have a Vatuna research group that's doing work around here, studying artificial reefs. They just built a new artificial reef on the south side of Palos Verdes, don't know if you know this, to help mitigate DDT, to help counterbalance what happened with DDT there. No public face for that. I volunteer with CSU Long Beach Shark Lab. Went out with them just today and swapped receivers out around the bay. And our receivers showed that there were 2 little tagged 6-foot white sharks bouncing around the bay, mostly up at Will Rogers, but they did swim by here. So there's a lot of fun stuff going on here that needs a public face, a place where you could visualize this data. Here's a place you could visualize that data.
Yeah.
So I definitely think this is worth pursuing. The Harbor Commission felt this is worth pursuing. We had Tom's presentation 2 months ago. I think it was a unanimous vote to pursue this further. And then last month, we had a presentation from Julie on waterfront education and Chris Lowe from the Shark Lab as another potential source of data, something we could populate this visualization with. I think it's really important to populate these visualizations well. When's the last time you went to a 3D movie theater? We don't want this to just be, God help us, a movie theater at the beach or a 3D movie theater with the wrong data. So we want to make sure we're populating this with good local content, great local science, and all that good stuff. So how all that fits together, don't know, but it is worth pursuing. We have a subcommittee at the Harbor Commission looking into it further. It includes Greg, Jim, Tom, and Vicky, I think. So that's my spiel on it. There's lots of local stuff in addition to waterfront education that we could populate this with. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Roger.
both for speaking. I appreciate it. So that's it for me.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
All right. I kind of was thinking just along those lines, which is I didn't know about the C Labs. I think it was shut down by the time I moved here. But looking at the presentation, I really appreciated it, and I'd seen it actually at Councilmember Narenheim's community meeting and was really impressed with it. But when I see the virtual reality kind of 3D stuff, I think kind of to a certain extent that the last thing that kids need is one more screen to look at when they're getting to the ocean front and the like. So what do you think, if I could ask you, what do you think is a competitive advantage of this ocean encounter that's going to cause somebody to come down to the ocean encounter?
Okay, well, a couple of things. First of all, augmented reality is different than virtual reality or video games. You see the physical world in front of you. You see the harbor. You can walk around outside along the waterfront with those. The glasses are a little bit not correctly represented. The screen is not in front of you. It's up here, and it's reflecting images in front of the actual physical space. And so that is something that, as Julie was pointing out, you can stream that media to anywhere in the world, but you're streaming what's actually in Redondo Beach, including what the marine drones pick up, what they pick up on the GoPros that they have off
I guess
their stuff. So there's ways of connecting that, but the idea is that every time there's a new set of media, whether it be the internet or television or radio, whatever it is, people are always alarmed, well, this is going to be disruptive from the actual interacting in the world. But the reality is, it's a tool. The idea that what I've worked on for 30 years was experiential education. I was one of the leaders of doing environmental education where I'm from in Minnesota. So those kinds of things are fundamental to the thinking of this project, not just interactive digital media.
Okay, I don't want to cut you off, but because we have such a long agenda, I kind of got to clean up my part. What I would hate to see is a new organization as great as it is, and clearly you've got a lot of scientists behind you and the like, come in and open this up here and push out all our locals, right? So I don't know whether Mike, the city manager, whether the plan was to have the organizations that presented to the Harbor Commission come and present to us, or whether you all selected Ocean Counter kind of as the winner, or the one that got the most support.
Well, what we're suggesting here is that Ocean Encounter provides the best mechanism to bring about the broadest bit of collaboration, right? Tom and his team, his whole basis and concept here is to provide for just a group of individuals to actually partner in this effort. So I think what Tom brings is that ability to connect all of those resources together. So tonight isn't selecting just a program or selecting just a facility construct. It's saying we want to pursue this endeavor with Tom and his team, and we want to direct you all to work to add to that collaboration and ultimately develop what would be, I think, a very broad not-for-profit organization that would create the ongoing framework and operation and context that would be provided, going forward. So that's why we believe in Tom and his team and his ability to collaborate because of his track record, as opposed to a singular entity that would view it as an isolated issue.
So when I look at the list of folks that you've worked with and they were on your board and the like, I think, okay, this is a person who clearly can work well with others and get people involved and the like. So I would very much like to see you work with Julie's organization, get them involved and the like if we move forward in this. And another question I have for you, Mr. City Manager, is does Measure C prevent us from expanding the footprint of the Joe's Crab Shack site to that, let's say, they occupy that entire parking lot that's right there?
Oh, I don't know if I could opine on that right now. I don't think the vision here would be to necessarily expand the facility out of the gate. It would be likely to generate similar square footage and just reorient the facility and provide for, on-site parking. We have, wouldn't so much be the expansion as it might be the parking situation that would create more problems there. But
so I guess just looking at, let's say they're really dedicated to what they've got planned right now and they presented to us, but they're open to adding on, having others too. Can we get a larger footprint facility
well, certainly,
there?
And I think what I would add to that is as we bring on more partners, there could be base camp there, but we might be able to aggregate additional sites within the waterfront that could be accretive to the overall educational program, right? So we don't have to just operate exclusively potentially out of the Joe's Crab Shack site. This might be the primary facility, but we might have sub-facilities that launch from other parts within the harbor. We have lots of property that we control.
Because if we see I think the general consensus is the Ruby's parking area is underutilized. Well, if you kind of not get rid of this parking around the Joe's Crab Shack, but occupy it with other educational uses, then maybe the parking is served by the parking that's over there next to Ruby's and all that.
Potentially, yeah. There's always that shared parking analysis that could come forward with different types of, development, whatever it might be. But our vision here would be to create a facility first and foremost, probably something that could be built and compartmentalized and added onto in phases. And then potentially it's phased even beyond the Joe site into other areas in the harbor that might also make sense. So, this is the starting point, not the end point potentially.
All right, thank you. That's it for me. Thank you.
I do want to respond to one last point, and this is something that I feel is very fundamental to our
I'll just make it quick, Tom, because we got a big agenda and I think you're going to get support.
Okay, the only point I wanted to make in closing, first of all, thank you to everybody, but the idea of collaborating with local talent is fundamental to our thinking. It isn't an add-on. It's the way we create it together.
All right,
basically. Thank you.
It's important to us.
Yeah, and it's going to be really, and not just collaboration, but you're really going to have to draw in the inner city kids that really have been excluded from a lot of this stuff and it really comes down to, as I talk to people, it really comes down to transportation. for the inner city kids from the inner city areas, particularly disadvantaged areas and communities of color. They have no reliable way to get out here safely, and so they don't come. I mean, you know, what I did was just a one-off. So no one mentioned the SEED program. We met with, I don't remember what it stands for. Can you brief us on that, Mike?
Yeah, the SEED Foundation is a national organization that builds charter schools effectively in different inner city communities. They're planning an LA installation here in the upcoming years. They've got a temporary site on the west side where they do part-time housing for students of need who have had issues at home or challenges with their own community. They plan to have, I think, at maximum build out approximately 400 students. They're going to have 100 freshmen enter the program, I think, in the upcoming fall. It's just and they have the ability through charter to have creative curriculum, unlike some of our public schools who have to be a little more rigid in their standards. So they're a wonderful partner. They're endowed individually. They're grant funded, and they have transportation, to your point, and the ability to move their curriculum outside of the normal classroom.
So we had a telecon with Leslie Poole, I believe.
Leslie Poole, who is the head of the CEO of the foundation at the DC level. She was out in LA last week, and they are ecstatic about the prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, collaboration with our local, with Julie and other people that are doing education in the waterfront, as well as, you know, people like the SEED program and others to draw people out to the waterfront. I mean, it's just a fantastic opportunity. And, you know, we talk about, Tom's got great ideas, and we talk about all these potential, and Julie programming of this and programming of that, but that's all kind of to be decided. This has been a lot of brainstorming, and it's all to be hashed out with the community and the other, you know, people.
And not the least of which, Mayor, is what can ultimately be funded and executed, right? I mean, we're going to, if we bring on partners, whether they be federal, state, regional, or private benefactors through philanthropy, you know, we're going to have to compromise a little bit on the nature of the programming and that in the funding realm as well.
Yeah.
It's not just necessarily sky's the limit. So.
Right, in comes the nonprofit, which is going to have to find a way to fund it on an ongoing basis. So. Anyway, I got two more comments from Councilmember Horvath, Councilmember Narenheim, and then we're going to go to the public, and we got to get going, folks.
Yeah, real quick, I remembered the third thing, and I just wanted to bring it up because Julie's comments reminded me when she was getting into comments about STEM, but I've been working with a group out of Israel called EcoWave Power, and they're partnering down with Altasea in San Pedro, and they're interested in bringing their tech here to harness energy using the waves, either you know, along the pier or along the break wall. And you know, so I've just kind of started to loop staff in on this, but I think, you know, to that point, right, there is so much science that is just beyond, you know, the wildlife aspect of it, right? And it would be really interesting to see how, if we're able to create some type of partnership with them and become a sustainable, like I've really believed in wanting to create a self-sustainable, from an energy perspective, city and harbor, and to have some project like that is generating, you know, it's a microgrid of generation for the harbor area, you know, that there's really great, again, synergy there that could happen. So just food for thought. And with that, I would just make a motion to receive and file and direct staff to continue the pursuit of this idea.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to.
Ideally, if we could approve the concept, I think if we could get that in the motion.
And the concept being?
Really just the ocean encounter concept and the direction to collaborate with potential partners and to move forward with possible implementation.
Thank you for that clarification. So there's a motion by Councilmember Horvath, seconded by Councilmember Lowenstein. Councilmember Narenheim.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, there's, that was my question earlier with the Shark Lab and other groups to make sure we have space for local groups. And there's a lot of activity happening here locally. So, and including the county partnerships with beaches and harbors and the youth water program, which is huge and key because they go to Marina Del Rey, and bring them down here to Redondo is just, it brings, while we might have a lost leader in the future, possibly in Seaside Lagoon, we can make up those funds with these type of partnerships. So as long as that motion included directing staff to working with Carlsbad Aquatics Ocean Encounter, that was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Kind of already tied in, or?
Yeah, as long as you're approving the concept, that's who our main partner is, and then we collaborate from there. Yeah.
Okay, are there any public comments? Anybody from the public would like to comment on this either live or online?
Okay, let's see. I don't see any hands on Zoom, but we do have an e-comment. Go ahead, Vicki.
Submitted by Laura Zahn. Does anyone C-Lab? Did any of you actually go on a tour of the C-Lab? It was awful. It was dark and dingy. Most of the teen staff was ambivalent. Some were flat out rude. The sea bass tanks were seldom available for public viewing. The feed the fish, you had to buy the food, and counter did not have anywhere near enough access area to actually see the food you tossed to the fish being eaten. I took my mother in her wheelchair, which was not a good experience at all. The inside area, dark, damp, dingy, had exhibits to see and or read about, but the exhibit size was small. The walkway area was very narrow, too narrow for anyone to pass a person in a wheelchair. I tried to make sure that Mom was not blocking anyone trying to go through this narrow walkway, but it was really too narrow to try to be polite to allow anybody or anyone to pass by us. There was also a drum activity going on in another room. The noise level was inexcusable. Whoever ran that drum group just let kids beat the drums as hard as they could. The drum organizers possibly thought that beating drums hard and loud served as therapy for the kids, but for those of us in close proximity, due to it being held at the same venue, it was unacceptable. The items, gifts to buy were very overpriced and of poor quality. Hopefully the Ocean Encounter will offer a more visit-worthy experience for all user groups. That concludes comments.
Okay, we have Mark Hansen on Zoom. Go ahead, Mark.
Good evening, City Council and staff. Mark Hansen, King Harbor boater and member of the Working Committee for the Harbor Amenities Plan. Just a couple observations. One is that the Harbor Commission received those wonderful presentations at their last meeting from both Julie Call's Waterfront Education Program and from the White Shark Program. I think it's, I don't think those have been provided to the City Council, and I think it would have been great to have done so you guys would have an idea of those two programs in addition to the Carlsbad program. So I'd encourage maybe staff could get those sent over to you guys so you've got them in your library of information. Second thing is I want to mention that at the last Harbor Commission meeting, those guys worked very, very hard on this subject. And boy, at the end, they spent about 30 minutes making several motions, which then the waterfront director was able to kind of summarize with their agreement. So again, obviously those minutes aren't published yet. So this evening, the City Council doesn't have the advantage of hearing those very well considered recommendations. So I just, in both these areas, just kind of want to point out that maybe we're a little out of phase with ourselves, that City Council is discussing and making, motion to move forward. And I'm not in any disagreement with moving forward. I think it's a phenomenal thing we're doing. I'm a huge supporter of marine education, but I just want to point out that the presentations and the info from Harbor Commission have not made it to you guys yet. So that's all I wanted to point out. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. So Mike, these ideas and or recommendations that were made by the Harbor Commission that are not in our agenda packet, is our motion tonight going to exclude the possibility of any of those happening?
No, absolutely not. I mean, we have a working group, as Roger mentioned. These draft plans and agreements and moving forward is going to take a lot of twists and turns. I mean, how we ultimately get to implementation here could go down a variety of paths. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for input. There's going to be a lot of conversations with potential funding agencies here and how this can be executed. Eventually, there's going to have to be formal facility plans drawn up and discussed. So we are in the very preliminary stages here, but we can't move forward unless the council is approving of the concept and ultimately believes that Tom and his team can help us effectuate a wonderful waterfront education center. So no, we will ultimately transmit that material to you at the right time and place, but we've got a lot of work to do and a lot of opportunities for Touchstone.
Great. Okay, any more comments from the public?
No comments. That concludes the comments, Mayor.
Okay. All right, there's no one here, so let's say there's a motion and a second. Is the motion clear to everybody? I think it is. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim?
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath?
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji?
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, well, there you go. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Julie and Roger, coming down, explaining
Thank you all.
everything, and there you go. Yeah, it's a great step forward. All right, next up is a public hearing on our budget. And I guess I'll just entertain a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Narenheim to reopen the budget hearing. Any objections? Okay, so the budget hearing is open, and I guess, Mike, you're going to take it away.
No, where are you?
I am, yes, thank you, Mayor. We've got a presentation here. Vicky, if we could move that over.
Oh, yeah, do we need to do ex parte communications? We do. Yeah, okay, let's go through that.
Yes.
Councilmember Narenheim, do you have any ex parte communications? Everyone who doesn't know what that is, that's who we've spoken to about this particular item leading up to this hearing. Councilmember Narenheim.
So I've been talking with Councilmember Lowenstein on this item on the council, and I've been talking to members of the public in detail, members of staff, Mayor Brand, over the whole items and all the decision packages and in great detail, so.
All 83 of them.
No, actually, well, I have a question on that, but not yet. Not all three of them.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
I've been talking to Councilmember Narenheim, Mayor Brand, staff, and the public.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Staff, public, and Councilwoman MD.
Councilmember Obaji.
The mayor and the public.
Councilmember MD.
Councilmember Horvath, the public, the staff, and that's it.
I've been talking to Councilmember Narenheim, Lowenstein, Councilmember Obaji, many members of the public, including even some leaseholders, as well, of course, as our staff. So there you go.
Mayor, I just want to make it
Open
clear.
to comments from the public. The big day is going to be June 21st when we approve our final budget. So people want to know what's going on in the city. People want to, try to influence what happens next. Now's the time to do it. Okay, there you go.
All right, so assuming we've got a motion here, we've continued and reopened the public hearing. I will proceed with our presentation, try to keep it as succinct as possible so we can get to your questions and comments. This is the second hearing of our 4-hearing process. First was conducted on May 17th, right after the delivery of our budget. Tonight's item will be largely focused on operations. You'll receive from us at the next public hearing next Tuesday, the 14th, a presentation on our proposed capital plan. And then we'll be looking for you to consider adoption of the budget at the 4th hearing on the 21st. Just a summary overview again of the proposed general fund portion of the budget. We start with the fund balance that we're estimating at year end to be just over $11 million. Our core revenues come in after updates and revisions, and we'll talk a little bit in the next slide about the changes to our general tax projections. But our core revenues come in at a little over 101 million. Our core expenditures a little under 102 million. And those core expenditures reflect changes to our various personnel and various M&O accounts that are subject to pre-contractual arrangements and any general cost escalation that occurs year over year in that regard. Our recommended decision packages on an ongoing basis net out to create roughly $1.7 million in additional annual spending. Our recommended one-time decision packages total just over $2.6 million. We're also recommending an allocation to our capital plan of roughly $4.3 million. I've mentioned at our last hearing that's for a single project, rehabilitation of the pier parking structure with some additional seismic upgrades. And then after all of that math, we are left with an unallocated general fund balance this fiscal year of about $1.8 million. Now, as I mentioned at the last hearing, these are our proposals. It has and will become the city council's budget here going forward. I imagine as we go through the various decision packages, you'll have suggestions and modifications, and we'll ultimately approve the budget with some variance. And ultimately, your 1.8 million could go up or go down in that regard based on that final action. But the one thing we have to ensure is that the budget is balanced with that final motion, and that number be 0 or greater, as you all know. Just to take a little time to talk about revenues, we won't belabor expenditure changes and the like, but from a revenue standpoint, I'm pleased to report that our core revenues from a tax standpoint are up about 3.4 million over mid-year. You see there significant growth on the property tax side of 5.1%, another $1.5 million, almost 1.6 million in additional proposed revenue. Our sales and use tax is actually becoming a brighter spot in the budget than it's been in the past few years. We're experiencing or projecting a little over $900,000 in increased revenue in that category. Our property tax in lieu of a vehicle license fee, an old state swap, from many years ago, continues to trend with our overall property tax figures. So we're seeing an additional $440,000 there. We're projecting our utility users tax to remain flat from mid-year. Mid-year was an upward revision, and we're keeping that number sort of where it's at. We're not quite sure and can't reasonably expect significant gains in UUT. Historically, you might recall UUT was trending downward, but during the pandemic, more folks were participating via different video streams and ultimately generating a little bit more income there for us. But we do see that as perhaps being flat next fiscal year. Our transient occupancy tax is growing. It's up from mid-year. We're projecting just under 6 million. And I'll note this later in the meeting, but it is still significantly down from our normal $9+ million a year projection. And that's because of the Marine Avenue Hotel situation that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Our property transfer tax, we project to go down a touch. We do, and this, of course, is working with our sales tax and property tax consultant with HDL. We don't expect as many sales of property in the next fiscal year as we experienced in this current fiscal year due to rising interest rates. And then other taxes are remaining largely flat. So when you look at our primary source of revenue, and this $73.5 million represents over 70% of our $101 million of revenues I mentioned earlier. So this is our primary source of ongoing funding. So to talk a little bit about that, we always reflect on where we're at from a structural budget standpoint. Before the decision packages, our ongoing revenues are about $600,000 short of our ongoing core expenditures. After decision packages, as I mentioned, right, decision packages are going to cost us potentially, if you approved them as proposed, an additional roughly $1.7 million. So that structural number moves to $2.3 million. The reason, and I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, I feel comfortable recommending that level of spending to you now is because we are short that $3+ million of TOT revenue that will be generated by the Marine Avenue Hotel site in fiscal year 23-24. So if you look at this being a 2-year or a 1-year plus transition from a structural balance standpoint, if all things remain the same, I would imagine that we will be structurally balanced in 23-24 in that fiscal year due to the return of traditional TOT from the Marine Avenue site. Of course, any adjustments that we make to the decision packages, both as it pertains to additional revenues or reduced expenditures, would modify that number on a go-forward basis. It's worth reminding everybody we have 2 general fund reserve accounts that are part of the budget. Our traditional economic contingency that represents roughly 8.3% of our annual spending. We have $8.3 million. That number is in our budget. It's reflected before the actual projected unfunded allocation of general fund of $11 million. So we have the economic contingency there at $8.3 million. And then we also have not proposed touching or spending or allocating the CalPERS reserve that currently sits at a little bit over $5 million. So those sources of funds remain intact and are not proposed for allocation as part of this budget. The budget, as I mentioned earlier, is balanced as proposed. Sometimes we talk about structural spending and think that it's not balanced, but by charter and by GASB rules and law, it's what achieves balance is, do you have sufficient revenues, whether they be one-time or ongoing in a single year, above expenses? And we do, as the department budgets are proposed. And then lastly, I want to mention, and this is, we're going on, as you can see, Jennifer Paul, our finance director, is not here tonight, unfortunately. She's still ill and is out of the office. So we are in the process of providing our traditional updates to our budget tables and documents and the corrections that we provide through Budget Response Report number 1. We have posted an update for the community, and it reflects a more accurate and more refined budget document online. You can see that through the updated link that is now there. But I would like to mention tonight that we are still refining that document. It has been slower coming than normal, given the circumstance we're dealing with in the finance department and Jennifer's absence. So we will continue to update that. It'll be clear. The budget response report describes the nature of those changes, and they're generally in the areas of tables of contents and accuracies and consistency of figures from one page to the next, because any of these different tables flow through the entire document. We will continue to refine and make sure that the final budget that is adopted is as accurate as it can be prior to your action on the 21st. But I did want to mention that document and those tweaks and Scrivener errors, if you will, and in some cases, some additional reflection of formulas will be there and will be refined further here over the next few days. Decision package highlights. As you mentioned, Mayor, we have 83 of them. I'm not going to go through all of them tonight. You're all, plowing through the various paragraphs and the justifications for each of them. Here's a list of some highlights, just to touch on them. One that I would draw some attention to, we have proposed in the budget a outdoor dining fee to begin to collect $2 a square foot for use of the public right-of-way in our public right-of-way areas, predominantly Riviera Village. That generates potentially significant revenue to the city. Now, how we want to spend that revenue and whether or not we would want to allocate that or work in partnership with the bid as it pertains to collection and or use for maintenance purposes and the like is definitely a policy discussion that this council can entertain, but that is part of it. There's a recommendation for some additional consulting services to help us wade through the prospect of eliminating our short-term rental ban. We have a prohibition on short-term rentals in our community. We know they continue to happen. We enforce the prohibition on a complaint basis. Last check, we have about 200 active short-term listings in the community. Our hotels occasionally will complain about that because these particular products do not require transient occupancy tax. If we were to eliminate the prohibition, we could begin collecting TOT through these sites. A very preliminary estimate, if just the 200 properties performed as they have in the last year, that alone would generate roughly $1.5 million of additional TOT to the city. So we think it's worth exploring and revisiting our current short-term prohibition. The budget includes restoration of library hours that were taken away during our COVID budget reductions, particularly at the North Branch Library. As has been mentioned, and I think will be a subject of policy discussion, we are proposing the restoration of the 3 firefighter ladder truck positions. It should be noted that we have the ability and flexibility to consider that proposal in something other than a grouping of 3 positions potentially. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing proposition. Our decision package number 8 proposes the restoration of the old cultural arts manager position that we took away a few years ago during our COVID budget reductions. There's a significant structural increase to our fire department emergency medical supplies of roughly $100,000, really to address inflationary mandates and quantity use in recent years. We have a proposed staff addition in the finance department of a new senior accountant that would deal with all of our various GASB requirements. We currently consult with a number of outside vendors to help package and allocate and account for our various requirements. They continue to expand. You'll notice there's actually a one-time consultant expense in there too to create the framework for one of the new particular mandates that have come out of the GASB rules. We are proposing, and we have temporarily created this position through an overfill program that the council blessed here shortly after mid-year, but we are proposing the installation of a permanent quality of life unit police sergeant that would oversee those functions and supervise our various code enforcement efforts. The council has consistently requested additional code enforcement across the community. We are down to 2 full-time officers. This would propose the addition of a 3rd position to support that endeavor. We also have creatively looked at the potential, as we have mentioned, it's difficult these days to attract and retain police officers as well as emergency dispatchers. We're proposing, much like we did with our maintenance personnel, a referral and recruitment program that would help hopefully bring about and bring on new candidates for those positions. We have piloted for the last couple years temporary crossing guard contract services. That program is working, and we would like to expand that and propose funding to support that effort in the next fiscal year. It's difficult for us with current staffing to provide resources necessary to support each of our crosswalk locations without the supplemental work of contract crossing guards. We talked earlier tonight about the Historic Resources Survey. That survey is very out of date, needs to be contemporized, and there are new rules associated with how a property is considered historic. My understanding is there is no longer an ABCD type program. There's either you're on the list or you're off the list, so there's more clarity, and ultimately I think it's time to spend the money. It's not cheap, but it's, as was mentioned earlier, has been the point of consternation for a variety of homeowners in our community, both good and bad. We're proposing the addition of a new position, the Pier Harbor Maintenance Manager. Our waterfront maintenance level is, I think, something that we all would like to see improve. We do not have sufficient resources to execute on those improvements. And candidly, our maintenance managers are stretched very thin. We have a lot of facilities throughout the community, and we feel have enough assets and need for maintenance in the waterfront alone to support a dedicated maintenance manager that could help us become more effective and efficient in the delivery of our services down there. Increased tree plantings, another kind of a fun one that's been supported by our various commissions and something we've brought about this year through the use of one-time funds. We want to continue that program. We have more money proposed to support that effort. City turf replacement, well, we actually proposed this before the budget, the governor announced the new restrictions. We now may not have a choice. This probably would have fallen into the mandated cost program if we had been aware of the governor's proposed water restriction changes. But we will now need to replace some of our city turf that is not considered functional under the state definition, which can be debated. And then the council has continually suggested, and I believe the community would like to see, enhanced capacity in our engineering division to execute more of our capital budget projects. The proposed CIP includes 122 projects and over $90 million of funding. We cannot achieve all of those project goals with the limited resources we have in that area. We're proposing the addition of 2 positions, a construction manager and an additional civil engineer. And then lastly, and granted, and we could spend all night talking about any one of the 83 decision packages. I don't mean to put the highlights up here as to suggest that these are necessarily more or less important than others, but just as a summary. But we are also proposing some funding for a grant writing contractor to help us go out there and chase some of that federal money and state money that's available to us. So we've done an RFP. We have a reasonable estimate as to what we think a standby contract will cost, and we are proposing some resources for that effort. So again, this is a sampling of our 83 proposed decision packages. They all have merit. All of our operating departments are represented here tonight and can answer any questions about any one of the 83 packages that we have in the budget, and would welcome those questions tonight. And we can talk about them more thoroughly. As mentioned, we are at the second hearing. We've got a couple more to go. We also have a second review of the budget from our Budget and Finance Commission that'll occur later this week. You'll be receiving their recommendations as part of your packet on June 21st. The Harbor Commission is also going to receive a presentation at their June 13th meeting to contemplate the budget and talk about it, largely from the Harbor Commission's purview. They'll be making recommendations to you and we'll include their suggestions as part of your June 21st agenda packet. We'll have our CIP hearing, as I mentioned, on the 14th, and then will be seeking adoption on the 21st. So that concludes my presentation. We stand by to answer any questions you might have, clarify what we can, and ultimately, if not, this is an opportunity for you to give us additional budget response reports that we can bring back to you either ideally on the 14th. We'd rather not, other than the commission comments that would be provided on the 21st, we'd rather try to get you all of your BRRs by the meeting on the 14th, so you have a full week plus to really deliberate on that material. We have a handful that are still outstanding. Those are reflected in the table of contents in the current attachment to the staff report. You'll see those in your packet next week. Those are in progress. And then anything else you direct tonight, we'll try to add to that list. And that concludes my remarks.
Great. Well, thank you, Mike. You know, I've been doing these budgets a long time, and I don't think I've ever seen 83 decision packages. But I want to thank staff. I mean, you know, well, actually, I don't know how much work. I can only imagine how much work it is, you know, leading up to this and cramming to get this all out by, I think it's May 15th. So really appreciate it with all these changes and needs. And we actually have some money in one-time expenditures we can make and consider ongoing expenditures. I'm a little nervous, you know, I'd rather see that revenue come in first before we start, you know, spending it, you know, on the hopes that it's coming in. That's just a general statement. I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing from the Budget and Finance Commission and the Harbor Commission. And yeah, I only have one budget request, maybe two. Let me make it two. The first one, and I know, since there's a lot of talk about this, and that is putting a police officer at every city during school hours. I think every school during school hours. I know it's going to be a huge number, but I think it's important for people to see it, especially those advocating for it. I think you're going to be stunned how expensive that is to continue our same patrol services.
And, you know, Mayor, if you don't mind, what we would also do in that BRR is illustrate all the various things that we do. Our department has been as proactive as any in the country in working with the school district to bring about safety. And we do that through communication. We do that through technology. We do that through dialogue. We were one of the first departments to implement run, hide, fight training in our schools with our school districts. That's becoming commonplace now, certainly in parts of California and alike. So we have been on the forefront of school safety. That's not to say that what we've done is at any given time sufficient to completely avoid the tragedies that we're seeing across the country. But we would also in there probably offer some of the suggestions that we do.
It's a great opportunity to highlight that. And I will continue to point out when there was an active shooter on our pier not that long ago, our cops went rushing in and took care of business and minimized injuries to innocent people. And even our public works people rushed in. So, yeah, I just remain quite proud of our police force for that, and even the public works helping out, who just happened to be out there. The other budget response report is what it would cost for design and construct a walking native garden path under the power lines right at the entrance to our harbor. We finally signed a lease with Southern California Edison for the area west of PCH, bordered by Redondo in the former U.S. Bank building and what everybody calls the dirt farm. It's a 5.44 acre parcel, and it'd be a great way to beautify an entryway into our harbor. And we just got the lease.
Yep.
And it's like $27,000 a year or something.
You set aside $150,000 in the CIP, as you know, Mayor.
Right.
Some of that money is being spent now on design. Architectura is under our employ now and is preparing concepts as part of our strategic plan. What we'll do is come back with you to give you a sense of what that total construction cost estimate looks like, particularly if it's in excess of our available funding in the CIP.
Right, yeah. I mean, we've leased the land. We got to do something nice. It's a great opportunity. I mean, it's basically been a staging area for various construction equipment, backhoes, dump trucks, off needs for parking and big dirt field. It's a great opportunity for somewhere for the public to go and enjoy the view.
Mayor, can we include a pollinator fountain in that BR?
A what?
Pollinator fountain?
pollinator fountain. I don't know about that. What exactly is a pollinator
Like
fountain?
a freshwater feature that's recycling water so that the birds can come get their water.
Yeah, you know, the Redondo,
mean,
no, there's purple pipe that goes right along Redondo, so maybe if it's
anything,
something
just be
inexpensive.
One just keeps recycling water to the extent it doesn't evaporate, and if it does evaporate, it puts in new water. But I have it in front of my place, this tiny one in front of my place, and birds come to it all the time in the summertime especially.
Oh, yeah.
And then they go and pollinate at the.
Well, that'd be part of the design. I mean, I think that's kind of what we're funding is, or asking for how much it would cost to not only design.
We can add that to the cost estimate. Yep.
Yeah. That's just a budget response.
We'll do a little research on it. Yeah.
There you go. So that was it for me. So Councilmember Imdy.
Great, thank you very much. I have a question about the capital improvements on the citywide traffic light upgrades. What exactly does that mean? Are we going to end up, at the end of having all these traffic lights upgraded, are we going to be able to have like a traffic console, which could then, if we needed to move traffic for a certain way, whether it's during time periods or whether it's a national or whether it's a citywide emergency where we can get cars out of here if there was a tsunami, for example, or something along those lines. Is that the eventual goal of getting these upgraded, or is that even another step?
I think that's probably another step. Our first goal is to just create enough technology to improve our flow rate, but I don't know, Ted, you please answer that question.
Whoa. Councilmember, if you could tell me which page are you on for that?
Well, right now, you're upgrading on page 20, you're upgrading on Prospect. But I know that this has come up year after year after year, and this is a part of the entire citywide traffic signal upgrade program.
Right.
And so I've asked this before, but for example, the city of Glendale has an entire console in which if there's anything that can happen, they can change all the lights green. So if there's a fire in the hillside, they can actually change all the lights green so that everybody could just get the heck out of there as quickly as possible. And you can adjust the lights accordingly. So if we have so many where the traffic goes out, and then they're in the morning, and then they come back in the evening. And if you could have be able to adjust the lights accordingly to accommodate that traffic flow, that would certainly help a lot in traffic circulation.
Okay. So the answers to all your questions are yes. Ultimately, what we're looking to do is to start off, we're improving the communication systems, and that includes the controllers. The controllers are the computers at each of these intersections that controls them. They have had in the past some form of communication. Some of them were not interconnected either by physical wire and or by wireless communication systems. So the objective is to every signal that we're working on today and every one that you see under this CIP is to upgrade that communication systems to the protocol that both Metro and LA County have set forward for all of our signals to be able to communicate with each other. And that again comes through either hardwire connectivity and or wireless connectivity. Our objective is to also have this connectivity go back into the Los Angeles County traffic signal management system. We have several corridors that are managed by LA County for us today. Our objective is to also get all of our signals at that particular level where the county can manage them and do incident management, as you mentioned. So in case there is a fire, an event, or anything of that nature, you could not only synchronize, but you can also coordinate a path for exiting vehicles or things of that. So yes, ultimately, every one of our signalized intersections will get to that point. And that is the objective, is to get that communication protocols in place so we can have full control of those systems remotely, not just at the location.
So if an incident happened, we would just have to call up LA County and to say, this has happened, and they would then coordinate the signals. It wouldn't be us in control, but we could have an avenue to do that.
Correct. And we would have that capability and capacity. We just don't have the resources, internal resources to do that work. We have contracts today to do signal maintenance and signal responses, but the full communication and full capacity to manage those signals, that's something that ultimately with the upgrade of all of the communication systems and control systems, we'll be able to coordinate that through LA County.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Number 2, I'd like to get a budget response report on beautifying the median in front of the commercial area of Phelan and Robinson to Johnston. The commercial area includes a hair salon, dry cleaner, dog groomer, caterer, Pinella's Brazilian restaurant, and the Beach Cities Cafe. There's a lot of sidewalk dining along there that's located here that would be enhanced by beautifying that median.
Can you give the streets one more time, Councilwoman?
It's the median that's between Robinson and Johnston on Phelan.
On
Well,
Phelan.
which turns into Beelan, so it's either, I don't know at what point does it turn into Beelan. Okay, number 3, the cost to add a crosswalk across Aviation Boulevard, either between Robinson and Manhattan Beach Boulevard on Aviation or between Artesia and Robinson. Actually, let's do a crosswalk for both. Just let's say we add 2 and then we can go from there. That's been requested by residents along Aviation Boulevard for quite a while.
So one more time, please, with the intersections. Aviation Boulevard
On Aviation Boulevard, somewhere, I'll let traffic engineer decide the best location between Robinson and Manhattan Beach Boulevard, and then Artesia between Robinson and Robinson on Aviation. Because it kind of curves at Robinson. And so I know I've had lots of requests between Robinson and Manhattan Beach Boulevard.
I got to make a comment about that. I would make it signalized because the most dangerous crossings are unsignalized crosswalks. More people get killed in unsignalized crosswalks than any other setup. I mean,
Like we did for Pearl.
yeah, so I would get a cost for a signalized one because, I mean, I think that's a Aviation Boulevard. I don't need to say any more, right? I mean, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, we wouldn't recommend a mid-block crossing. Yeah, we wouldn't recommend a mid-block crossing on those boulevards without a signal, I don't think, at this point.
And if you signalize it, of course, I would hope that you would make sure that it's synchronized with all so that people don't stop 17 times.
If I may also ask the council member, it would be either a signal or a hybrid pedestrian signal. I know they're not necessarily famous in terms of certain locations, but those would be activated at by a pedestrian request rather than constantly be changing and cycling out.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be open to whatever the traffic engineers would recommend on that. But definitely, it's just actually, just to be clear, these budget requests I put out on my newsletter a request to residents what they would like to see in this budget, and this is what they've come back with. Number 4, along the North Redondo bike path, I had a long conversation with Desi Alvarez from the Water District, and anyway, we found out we had a lot of things in common, but Desi found out, Desi and I were talking, and he definitely thinks that along that whole right of way, we could put in drought tolerant trees that just need to have a little bit of establishment with water. So for example, he suggested olive trees along the path, and it would provide shade to the path, and it would provide beautification along the path. So I know it costs a lot of money to do those 2 sections to truly fully landscape it, but perhaps if we just kind of start, the idea of those was to create a framework of what to do on the rest of the path, and let's start just going step by step if we can't do the whole thing.
So just the idea of what it would cost and the potential feasibility of planting trees on the path. I know there are some height limitations and some species restrictions because we're in the transmission corridor, but we can provide you a BRR.
But they've already agreed to that bike path itself, and if we're right on each side of that bike path and provide shade to be able to do that, that would be, I think it would add a lot to help beautify that area. And I'm open to other ideas, but we need to start looking at what it would cost to put in drought tolerant landscaping. And I think that just adding the bushes that we have in the 2 sections right now isn't really enough to beautify that area. I think if we just added some trees, we wouldn't have to put as much landscaping in. You know what I'm saying? So number 5, I know it's in there already, but I just want to say that was one of my number 1 requests was pickleball. So let's just make sure that, make sure you know that. And senior center, let me, I apologize. Let me pull up this. She did it so beautifully, the email that she sent me.
While you do that, Councilwoman, can we talk pickleball for a second? Right now, we're coming back with a BRR to give you the specific, and this is really just a reminder of what we had in our recent study, but the specific cost to install pickleball courts on the open field behind Aviation Gym. That's going to be in your packet next week. Do you want something beyond that in your pickleball request?
I'm just reiterating that I find that important. Okay, and then, so one of the things that everybody has said is that there's a lack of, I'm sorry, she's on here, Gail. Oh, I see, it's under Gidget. So just to give you an idea, as a 23-year-old recreation person in 3 different cities, I'd recommend putting a second story on the senior center, either at Perry Park or at Anderson Park, to turn it into a true community center. The same could, there are no facilities available to youth from 5 to 11 or adults between 18 and 55 to hold classes or other activities indoors in North Redondo. Take a look at the recreation schedule of classes. There are very few enrichment classes other than the summer camps, and the cost of these camps are out of reach for some of our families. Not everyone in Redondo Beach can afford to take these classes at private art studios, cooking schools, etc. So she went on, rather than read the whole thing, but there's really no true full-on community center in North Redondo Beach. And I've mentioned this before as far as the seniors are, their exercise classes, those are really not conducive to that. They need the air conditioning, the airflow, they need the communicate, to be able to do the microphone system. So our community's changing and we need to change accordingly, and we need to figure out how to accommodate those needs. So I know that we have a full-on community center at one point with $6 million. I know that, but we got to figure out what's a more reasonable way to be able to meet some of these.
So is your request cost to renovate and expand programming at the Anderson Park Senior Center?
Yes.
Yes. And we can do that. Although one
I'd be
obvious.
open to Perry as well. It doesn't have to be Anderson.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be Anderson, but I think Perry's it's already being asked to do a lot. But I'm open to that. We need to figure out a way to be able to have more community spaces for people to meet and have classes and exercise, things like that.
We do have, what we might want to also think about is treating these facilities. I know this will probably come across as sounding like we're moving away from exclusivity, and our seniors in particular. We have 3 distinct senior centers. We have a singular teen center. We may want to think about being more creative and more multi-purpose in our use of those buildings to provide for additional space of this nature. While we have all of those facilities, many times during the day they are dormant and could be programmed with uses that may not be senior or may not be youth. And certainly and there's a BRR requesting upgrades to the teen center. That open general area outside of the traditional teen center hours could be used for a lot of things, particularly while our teens are in school. So
I'm open to that. I'm open to those kind of things, but I think we need to have that kind of put in there. All right. And then those are what are recommended by District 5 residents who responded to my email. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember, I got Obaji, but he's not here right now. Let's give him a minute to come back. Maybe he heard me.
I made a reply.
Oh, I didn't see it. There you are again. Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein, and then we'll go to Councilmember Obaji.
A couple things. One is I want to echo what the mayor said. Thank you for staff, department heads, everybody else for putting this together. It's a lot of work, and we appreciate it. So I want to thank you for that. The other thing is I also want to say what I think some of the people might have missed about police officers at our schools. We passed a bond years ago at the school district to basically secure our schools. There's fencing around all of them. Anybody has to go through the offices. And I will also say our police are excellent with response times. I've never heard a complaint about that. So I just want to echo what the mayor said. before we get into the whole discussion about a BRR related to that. So your kids are safe. We're doing the best we can, but your kids are safe. A couple questions I have. One is the $4.3 million for the retrofitting of the garage. When will that report be presented?
The Walker report and our presentation on capital will come next week as part of the budget hearing. You'll get some more detail as to what that project entails. There's two components. There's rehabilitation, normal spalling repair and the like, and then there's the component that's seismic.
Okay.
And those are two different cost items. And that is something the council may want to note as it thinks through this. The seismic retrofits are standalone amidst the general rehabilitation. So we'll draw that out for you, and you will receive a presentation from Walker, our parking consultant and engineer. And as you know, we are coming back with the BRR on the cost of a potential second opinion, so to speak, if we were to have the engineering integrity revisited by another consultant.
Okay. Let's also make sure that people understand it's not just 4.3 million, it's probably 20 million over.
Yeah, I mean, the Walker report, and I hate to put words in the engineers' mouths and the like, but my understanding is that the report is going to lay out what it anticipates of rehabilitation need over the next 5-10 years, et cetera.
Okay. Next question, when will we have a presentation on infrastructure bonds?
Also part of the the 14th, okay. I met with Cosmont today, and they will be, so what we will do with next week's presentation is you'll receive really 3 as part of one larger hearing. Mm-hmm. You'll receive a presentation from staff on the proposed projects in this CIP. You'll receive a presentation from Walker on the current state of the parking structure and why we're proposing what we are with the seismic and rehabilitation work. And then you'll receive a presentation from our folks at Cosmont, Dan in particular, on current pricing for bond financing for capital repairs.
As well as our bonding capacity, correct?
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that holistically. We're going to give you some range of options, particularly for tax exempt bonds, which these would be, and which makes us a little more competitive in pricing.
Okay. Getting on to some of the decision packages, 64 about citywide, city maintained turf replacement. And I know we've looked into this, but West Basin Water grants, correct? Yep. Mm-hmm. So that isn't included in any of this. I've talked about turf replacement in front of our city hall.
Yeah, we would, this would be a set aside of funds for us to pursue that effort, whether it be design. We would absolutely pursue grants with Waste Basin to try to supplement those resources and in some cases supplant if we can. But this would be us committing to that work as a starting point.
Okay. 66. In particular, engineering services, civil engineering, and capital projects, construction manager positions. We know we're short-staffed. My question is, we've contracted out companies in the past to do this, but honestly, it hasn't sped up the projects. How do we know that if we spend $330,000 that this is going to speed up the project?
Yeah, that's in part why we are making this recommendation, because at the end of the day, we can have as many consultants as possible advancing design, project management and the like, but at some point they all have to come back and have a check-in with our existing staff, and we are just at capacity. These 2 individuals would help expand that capacity, that oversight capability, and allow us to execute projects more quickly, particularly construction manager, which would then, who would have expertise in the management side of the equation, then allow our other engineers to step back towards design effort rather than do both.
So that would be for things like the bicycle plan implementation, correct?
Everything we do on the civil engineering side would benefit potentially from this.
Okay. One thing I didn't see in here was an estimate of the cost to do software for project management.
Yeah, you funded that as part of, as part of the, in fact, we have, I think, a mid-year appropriation that was supporting some of that work.
Was that?
Yeah,
okay.
I believe so.
Okay, I didn't see it, but that's my oversight. Also, the website redesign, that was also funded as well?
We think we're funded in the IT replacement account, but of course, that's, subject to ultimate selection, of course.
Okay, I'm nearly done. The last question is, or last thing I'd like to request is a budget response report on the cost of installing pickleball courts on the Ruby's parking lot. Opening a can of worms. But whether it's possible or not I just want to know the cost. And Also, we realize that there's lots of things that go on there, so including beach life twice a year.
Yeah.
Just want to know the cost.
And we'll throw in the feasibility too, in case there's a LCP issue. I don't.
Yes, I realize that the Coastal Commission may not be ecstatic about it, but that's a bridge we could cross later. But anyway.
We'll get you that.
If it's not a big deal, I would appreciate that.
It'll probably be rough. These will be rough estimates, but.
Yeah, let's get you that. Okay.
Any sense of order of magnitude? I mean, are we talking?
Two tennis court sizes, so it would be like
8 to 10. We give you a range.
Let's say 4 to 8.
Okay.
And maybe not permanent, maybe temporary.
Okay.
Okay. So I realize it's a big deal and it's not coastal dependent, or might be coastal dependent. We'll see. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
I promised that I'd have no more BRRs, but as long as you fulfilled all my past BRRs. And I recall that when we talked about the skate park at the pier, we said, let's go forward with that and come back with a budget response report on how much it would cost to fix Perry Park.
That Perry Park fix is actually proposed in the CIP.
Ooh. In the CIP, got it. Okay, so.
I think we have, Ted, $35,000 in there. Jesse, help me out. 25. It's to correct the situation out there now and explore the additional.
Is that are you going to address this in another meeting or?
Yeah, we'll get a presentation on it next week, but yeah, we can talk about it now if you'd like.
So is it just to move and reconstruct if they break the features that we already have? Or is it to build out a
And
full-
potentially, I think, look at exploring and building out into that area that was identified to the east.
Yeah, okay. And you think that's going to be covered with 25,000 or so?
I think so. We'll
35?
We'll double check that as part of our presentation next week, but I believe that it's 30,000.
All right, well,
yeah.
Thank you then. Sorry, covered. All right, I didn't see in the decision package for the BRR.
Yeah, we haven't talked CIP yet, but that's
Okay, cool.
that's one of
Thank
our
you.
proposed projects.
Appreciate that. So I have no more BRRs.
Okay. Councilmember Narenhut.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. We funded years ago a parking study in Walker.
Yep.
For 35 grand or less.
For the village. Yep.
Village, yep, that whole area. Where are we with that?
So you're not talking the parking structure
No,
report?
the parking study, not the
parking
structure.
study, yes.
Walker,
I will have to defer to Andrea on that. You want to come up, Andrea?
Andrea Delap, Senior Management Analyst with Public Works, but for this item, Police Department. The Walker parking study was completed in February. We went back and forth with them to ask for additional data to come forward. We requested additional recommendations. Some of the recommendations were a little vague. That report has been completed and will be coming to council in the coming months. I would propose that at mid-year, there are some recommendations for fee increases or fee adjustments. If council was to give direction in that regard, that would be for mid-year, not a budget at this time.
Are there no requests for infrastructure, like parking devices?
I'll tell you what we'll
and-
do, Councilman. We'll give you a quick BRR on anything that's clear in that report that has a cost implication. So you have that for you as part of the CIP. We won't touch operational issues.
Yeah.
Because we want to give you the full report. But if there's anything that's come out of that report that suggests structural changes to parking in the village that might need to be funded, we'll try to surface that for you as through a BRR.
I think that's a great suggestion. And there are some things that some of the other studies may impact council's decisions moving forward on that.
And that's exactly, I know we were talking a lot about parking on Artesia Boulevard. And so this was mostly just focused in the very, very southern part.
It was solely focused in that area. There was very clear
Right.
parameters of where the study was taking place,
But
yes.
parking overall in the city is an issue. So I want to just get, I guess, just an overall viewpoint of where we're going and be pre-planning for that. That's fine. Okay.
We'll get you something on that.
Thank you. You know, I have some minor updates to Alta Vista and the dog park that's there and some other areas. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the total list of items there. They're all pretty small. Can I just provide those to you during the week, and then it doesn't need to be a full budget response report. I'm looking for some of these items just kind of a broad scope, and then I guess Alta doesn't have a CIP project as a whole. It would fall more under the total maintenance contracts, or maintenance side of the parks. The funds that we have for maintenance on parks, is that specific to an individual project, or do we have just a general maintenance fund?
It's more aggregate. So we have some discretion in how we spend our regular annualized maintenance and operations budgets.
So that's I keep saying that maintenance and operations budget for Public Works.
Yeah, and there is a Park Services division within that framework, and that Park Service division would have its own materials and supplies budget, its own resources. We can talk, and if it rises to the level of BRR, we can provide it on the 14th. But it's really more an exploration: is there sufficient funding, I think, to provide the regular maintenance that might be associated with these new dog runs. And if you want, we could simply answer that question as a BRR as well. Do we need additional maintenance and operations resources to sustain our new dog run facilities?
I mean, that's kind of more in your ballpark if it's going to require more maintenance. I mean, there's some items that have been requested for me, and I have them on a list. They're all small.
They're kind of enhancements, small enhancements.
Enhancements, really. So I guess my statement on that is I'd rather just put a little bit more extra money into that fund, the maintenance and operations fund, and the Park Services fund. What I'm looking for then, because I didn't see something in the budget on that overall scope. I probably was looking in the right place. On our subcommittee for the fire department, we talked about in the first meeting getting a third party for helping us along if we were to go further down this path of the county fire study. Do we have a reference point in terms of what that would cost if we want to go down that path?
We could get you a BRR on that. I mean, if you're looking for third-party consultant services to assist in the, evaluation of.
Right, like Hermosa did, and many other cities have or have not gone down that path. The Riviera Village paver project, we put in $350,000 last year. That's just one of the many items on the CIP list. Moving forward.
That would be a carryover item. I mean, all projects that we haven't executed this year are proposed for carryover.
You guys are currently working with the bid, particularly Alan Sanford and his designer for the outdoor garden parklets.
We are. We're working with them on it. I think if the council approves the $2 fee, it's going to accelerate some of these conversations. But we're talking to them both about a kind of the midterm update to the facility, and then the longer term solution if and when we get confirmation from Coastal Commission that we can permanentize these changes. And we are working with them on that, and certainly that conversation will expedite with the fee.
So to that exact point regarding the village and small upgrades, by the way, Mr. Klein and Public Works Ted, those new bike racks are being used every single day. Just so everyone knows, there's a bunch of like 4 sets of new bike racks that were installed on Catalina. The day that they were installed, boom, bikes were there locked up and being used every single night. Electric bikes, regular bikes, everything. So, one of the things that's been asked about, I want to again utilize our nonprofits and volunteers, and the bid is essentially a volunteer group, and utilize them to maybe do some artwork or spice up some of those bike rack areas. We talked about this. I don't think we need to create a whole other fund or do a whole BRR, but if we were to add some money into funds to beautify our streets like we could on Teja Boulevard, same thing, same concept consistently throughout the city.
Yeah, we could do a cost on kind of a refresh of our Riviera Village kind of street furniture plan, and it doesn't mean it has to be an expense to do a study, but it would just be there to provide updated equipment as we go
Not looking
forward.
for a big study for a big, huge thing. I'm just like, hey, would this fall under the maintenance and operations fund for public works?
It would, but this would, I mean, if we, let's say as an example, let's say you said, hey, can we move away from the terracotta pot? I want to do something a little bit more exciting. Well, we would probably set some one-time money aside either in the operating budget or the capital plan to bring about replacement kind of pots and materials, right? But I don't think that's necessarily what you'd want to do. You'd probably want to start with a new kind of pilot installation of new furniture at a different location, see how it's liked, and then begin to, cycle out the older material.
Right.
But we would probably suggest some one-time funds to help assist in that.
Okay. And the last question, the bollards, I don't know if our chief of police would know, maybe the former one.
Grant application.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe you know.
The grant application for the safety bollard installation.
Homeland Security.
It was, I think it was a Homeland Security grant.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joe Hoffman, Chief of Police. So that's an interesting one because that was actually funding that was included in the 2022 Homeland Security grant. And we got a call this week that the funding has to be cut by a certain amount of money. And that's one of the projects that may be jeopardized in the 2022 grant. So we have the portable ones, which have been delivered, and we have over at the annex now. And we're still working on how they operate. They're pretty large pieces of equipment. So as far as a permanent installation, the way that the Homeland Security grant works is that everything's divided up into investment justification categories. And there's some that are considered national priorities, which is IJs 1 through 5, and others, IJs 6 through 10, that are not national priorities. So the funding cuts were required to be out of the categories of investment justifications that were not national priorities. And those bollards that was dedicated for down there, I want to say it was around $42,000 or something like that, were part of the proposed cuts. However, it could get put back into the grant depending on cost savings that occur as the application moves forward. But as of right now, the funding that was previously established for that may not be available in the 2022 SHISH-CAP grant.
42,000, that sounds about right, okay.
Is that what it was, Andrew? Okay.
Could I ask a question real quick? Hey, Joe, would matching amount maybe help you get the money? I mean, like if they're not going to give you 42,000, maybe they give you 21,000.
Well,
City threw in
not
20.
for the SHISH-CAP grants, no, because the SHISH-CAP grant doesn't have matching funds. I mean, I suppose we could find an alternate way to fund that project, but I'm not exactly sure how much that, if we would need more than that or not.
If it would matter
But
to your
SHISH-CAP
application.
grant's not a matching funds grant.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. The Riviera Village has actually, I want to say they actually bought all of the water barriers that are inside the garden parklets right now. They've essentially bought those. Could we store them for them if they wanted to? Is there some sort of reciprocity agreement we could set up with them for that?
Well, as you know, our storage space is pretty limited. Could we find a place for them? We would want to do that, I think, if there was some sense that we would also be able to use them for essentially other kind of city needs.
Right.
It would really depend on order of magnitude. I mean,
Okay.
if we're talking, 100 K-rails, water K-rail barriers, it's a different discussion than, say, 20,
Yep. Okay, that's fine. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Obaji.
Can we ask about decision packets today?
Sure. Yep.
All right, so I'm seeing that we've got a significant amount in carryover vehicle replacement purchases and new vehicle replacement purchases. I guess threshold question, do we actually think that we'd be able to purchase $2 million of new vehicles this year?
Yeah, it's a good question. The carryover one you see is unusual. We wouldn't normally recommend that action this year. And the reason for that is we would typically wait until our normal carryover actions in November, where you would approve that funding or reauthorize that funding for reuse. The reason we're asking for you to appropriate it now is because there may be a window between the end of this fiscal year and July when we stop spending 21-22 monies, and then that November, December carryover action by council where these vehicles may be available for purchase. our vehicle, it's been a revolving window as to when dealerships are allowing groups to access their inventory. One minute we'll get a notification that you can buy the vehicle, and then it's sort of snapped away, and then we're told it's 6 months later. So the bigger question you're asking is, do we reasonably think we'll be able to spend all of that money next fiscal year? I certainly hope so, but it's not unreasonable to think that it may not happen. The question is, we won't know exactly which vehicles will and won't be available over the next fiscal year. So if we were to, say, fund it at half the inventory, we'd be guessing as to what might be available. We do believe and are strongly recommending that all of those vehicles on this list get ultimately purchased and replaced. The timing is going to be subject to supply chain.
All right, and I can appreciate that. Looking at 35, decision packet 35 about the vehicle replacement fund appropriation for gas and CNG. Are we not moving any of our new fleet into electric?
We are, and we are whenever we can. Historically, that has been for sedan purchases as we've explored that. Right now, there just isn't, other than the F-150 Lightning, which is not available. There's a 3-year wait list right now. We just haven't had trucks.
Like parking enforcement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are those all electric right now?
They're not all electric, but we continually look to purchase electric where possible. They are significantly, at this point, more expensive than their gas counterpart. What about if
we factor in the gas use per annum? How much are we spending per one of those vehicles?
Yeah, over time it may balance. I don't know if
especially because we got those
Ted or Jesse come up and talk a little bit more about electric
spots in front of the police station. I don't know how occupied how much they've been getting used, but it seems like it'd be easy charging.
And if you'd like, we can talk.
There's no maintenance on electric.
That's what I'm saying. It's much lower.
You'll see a BRR from us that talks about the specific vehicles that we are recommending for replacement this year. We usually have a section in there that talks about electric, versus gas. I don't know, Ted. We can beef that section up and talk about the cost implications if you'd like.
Yeah, as far as the actual operating cost for fuel usage and maintenance, I don't have those kinds of numbers for you. But our objective is with any department that has a need, if it's a sedan or a smaller vehicle, our number one objective is to try to find them an electric vehicle. I know for engineering, as an example, that is one of the pool cars that we use. It is now a hybrid, and that's proposed to become an electric vehicle when that gets purchased. Pickup trucks, like Mike said, those, until they become available to us, CNG has been our preferred method. And the CNG, I can tell you that the cost of the conversions from those gasoline engines to CNG has been significant over time. But as far as the EVs themselves, aside from the cost factor, we're promoting and we're pushing for those to become EVs unless we have strong justifications as to why not. And we'll typically bring that forward to you and let you know why it is not. I think the ones that have been excluded are police patrol vehicles, police use vehicles, undercover vehicles, fire apparatus, obviously, and then any of our heavy equipment. But if that vehicle becomes available to us in EV and has the proper range, we're proposing that to come forward as an EV.
All right, cool, thank you. As far as the capital project, the $30,000 for the Perry Park, is that something that, how are we going to get the $30,000 for that? Is that just using money that's left over from the initial project, or is that appropriated?
No, it's a new appropriation to supplement the account. The current account is going to be fully spent down at the pier between the two sites. This would be a supplemental appropriation dedicated to.
So is there a decision packet for that, or that's just as part of passing
It's part of the proposed CIP. If the CIP is proposed without modification, funding would be appropriated for that effort.
Okay.
It's specific. I don't know if we can point to the project number in the page. Page 52 in your CIP is page 52 in your CIP is dedicated to that project.
I guess I'm just asking, this is more of like an elementary question as a relatively new councilman. How do the CIP projects get funded, new CIP projects get funded if not through a decision package?
They get funded through your approval of the CIP as proposed. So the CIP lays out by funding source, by project type, our recommended appropriations.
Right.
One of those recommended appropriations by line item is this $30,000 for the Perry Park skate park.
And how much, if you know offhand, I guess I got to look at the CIP, but how much of new funding for our CIP do we have
Well,
for this year?
It varies, and you'll get this in a little more detail next week, but at year end last year, the council transferred its normal $1 million of general fund resources to the CIP for consideration as part of our proposed budget this year. That's been allocated and distributed to various recommended projects. We also have our traditional Quimby funding source, our Parks and Rec facility funding source, which receive annual revenues, and then our transportation restricted sources, as you know. So I can't tell you exactly if it's Quimby or if it was.
Got it.
It's a Quimby. It's a recommended Quimby allocation.
All right, perfect. Thank you. That's it for me for now. Thank you.
Okay, any comments from the public?
Okay, I have, for Zoom, I have no one here for the public. And we have one comment, e-comment, Vicki.
Is there any live participants in the audience who'd like to comment on the budget?
I'll remember to introduce myself this time. Roger Carlson, resident of District 3 and on the Harbor Commission.
He's the only one who didn't.
Sorry, I knew your name, but I haven't seen your face.
Totally right. First, I want to say thanks for including the Harbor Commission in this process. Mike, your time last meeting and coming up. I know it's difficult, but I hope we can include something in the decision packages or somewhere to bite off a little bit in what's in the amenities plan. There's going to be some little stuff in there, we can do with city funding, things like, park benches and wayfinding and things like that we've been discussing throughout the rest of the city. I'm sorry if you already discussed this. I had to step out for a little while. And then I want to switch hats and just say, as a resident, in these decision packages, please fund city staff. Being on the Harbor Commission, I've seen these decision packages more and more, and I've seen how you go, oh, yeah, we can cut a head here, we can cut it, half a head there, and there won't be any harm from it. And I start to see harm from it. We're a high tax area, and that's okay as long as we're also a high service area. So you see things like, abandoned sailboats in the harbor that never go away until harbor patrol officers work that problem. They ought to be out patrolling the harbor. There's other members of staff who could deal with problems like that. Waterfront and economic development is typically staffed at 3 heads. For part of this year, it was staffed at 1 head. I know that's going to be brought back up, but they're a force multiplier for everything we're doing in the city. And there's even more we're putting on that office. There's a lot of other small things like that. There's parts of the city website that are stale because people don't have time to update it. So I just see, little small things here and there where these little half heads here and there really hurt. So, please be careful of that in the budget season this year. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Any other live comments here in the auditorium about the budget? Okay, anybody online?
Yeah, we have an e-comment submitted by Caleb Curzan. Please consider the removal of funding for decision package 4. We and several of our immediate neighbors are very much in opposition to paying $25,000 to a firm that specializes in the administration of municipal short-term rental programs. We have lived next door to 2 homes that had short-term rentals. With the closeness of properties, it is negatively impactful in a number of ways. When folks come visit for a few days or a week on vacation, they are on vacation hours with partying and loudness that are very problematic to families next door. Adults and teens who need to wake up and go to work the next day, kids with early bedtimes, and of course, windows open since no AC. They often have shown disregard for community rules with dogs, noise ordinances, blocking driveways, etc. I realize the potential TOT is enticing, but not work quality of life to the residents. Please don't fund decision packet 4. And that concludes public comment.
Well, in response to that comment, I would tell this person, I forgot the gentleman's name, that he should call the police. And especially if this is ongoing, and send an email to me, send an email to a council member in your district, and we follow up. And as the city manager said, we're in really a complaint-driven enforcement system. And if we get the complaint, we send them out there, we ask them for their contract. This is illegal, and even if it was legal, you can have certain rules and regulations to maintain it. But we have to hear from the complainant first to do anything about it. So I don't know if they've complained or not?
I don't know, we'll look into the location, Mayor. And I do know we receive sporadic complaints regarding, not candidly, before we even proposed this initiative, I did a check with Joy Abakine and some of our own staff to determine in code enforcement how many complaints we get. We get some, but not as many as you would think for the 200 units that are currently actively online. So we can certainly look into this particular location, and we think potentially a program where we bring people into the fold who are incentivized to play by the rules because there's significant revenue available to them might actually bring about better compliance. But that's a speculation at this point.
Yeah, and I would encourage the residents not to be afraid to call and complain, write, and give us details, and we follow up. And it's not hard. You just show up and ask for the contract, and it makes a big impact. I've dealt with several of these complaints. Not always. I mean, sometimes you have these serial problems, and then eventually they get dealt with. But we have to hear from the residents. And I know most people think, I'm not going to call the police about this. We got to call somebody and send an email or whatever, and we'll get somebody out there to look at it. So.
Well, Mayor, just to add to that, I've had lots of luck with the quality of life at redondo.org email. They're extremely fast. And so if you don't want to bother the police, just use the quality of life at redondo.org email, and you actually will get a response quite quickly.
By the police, but.
Well, or whoever the appropriate person is.
It's a group, it's a targeted group. It's monitored by various staff and code enforcement police and our various prosecution sides. So it's good. Thank you for mentioning that. It's a good suggestion.
Yeah, we're here to respond. Absolutely. I just know people generally don't want to bother us, but that's what we're here for. So. Anyway, Councilmember Obaji.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the point is if we legalize it and get that additional $1 million in TOT, we could potentially afford to pay our officers more so we could recruit more officers or give signing bonuses so that we can have more, quicker responses to nuisance issues. And also, I just want to let folks know that to the extent you have a continual problem with a neighboring property, you've got to also reach out to private attorneys, civil attorneys, because that's a nuisance and everybody has the right to quiet enjoyment in their own property. And so to the extent somebody's creating a nuisance next to you, you have action that you can take both through the city as well as private individually to get it to stop. That's all.
Councilmember Narenheim.
Yeah, real quick. This came up at my last community meeting, and it was actually a great question. It was, how much are we actually spending on, as a BRR, actually spending on our homeless outreach services, all the homeless, and including some of our public works and police when they respond to calls. I know it gets a little bit.
Yeah, that becomes more of a staff allocation question, but yeah.
But I mean, I don't want, you to spend 1,000 hours on getting exact little details. Just, okay, we get approximately, 10,000 calls a year and 500 of them are related to homelessness. So therefore we can extrapolate, just a small thing and broken down as to, our pallet shelter is extremely successful, but what is the cost that we are getting and how much are we getting from the county? We're expected to do a lot more now. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, we can try to package up the sort of total spending on homeless programs, and we'll provide our sources of revenues too, although those have ebbed and flowed over the years, depending on grants.
Right. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, is there any more public comment online or in the audience?
No, we have none on Zoom.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
Motion to continue the hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Obaji, second by Councilmember Lowenstein to continue the hearing. So is there any objection?
Nope.
Okay, so the hearing is continued to a week from tonight, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. The mayor's gonna take off right now because I gotta be at the Sonesta and give my state of the city, 7 tomorrow morning, bright and bushy-tailed. So I'm gonna leave all the fun to you guys, the rest of the fun. So Mayor Pro Tem Obaji's gonna take over.
Now I regret signing up for it, but I'll be there to watch the mayor. All right.
Well, I gotta perform.
Moving on to
A lot
L2.
easier.
Public hearing to consider Arakelian Enterprises, Inc., DBA Athens Services proposed solid waste charges and fees for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Mayor Pro Tem Obaji, I'd like to get the ex parte communication on L2, because I think we did ex parte communication with Pearl.
Yes. All right, so let's go through ex parte communications on this agenda item. Councilmember Nierenheim.
I have not actually talked to anyone on this issue yet.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
I have not talked to anyone either.
Councilmember Horvath. Nope. Councilmember MD.
I have not spoken to anyone.
Likewise, I have not spoken to anybody about this issue. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have a presentation from somebody here today? Let's see.
Need to open the public hearing also.
Oh,
Motion to open the public hearing.
all right.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Nierenheim. Public hearing is now open.
We get a vote?
Oh, we got a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Nope, 5-0. All right, Director Saman?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right.
Ted Simon, Public Works Director. Yes, we do have a brief presentation for you. This is our annual discussion on rate adjustments for our solid waste. With me tonight for the first time is Andrea Delap. She's our Senior Management Analyst. She'll be providing this presentation. And just to let you know, she'll present their names. We do have representatives from Athens Services in case you have any questions specific to Athens. So, Andrea?
Ted, do you always just take everybody from the police department? That's my question.
A little unusual. They're gone, so yeah, I can say yes, thank you.
Multitasking.
All right. Evening again, Andrea Delap, Senior Management Analyst with Public Works. This evening, also with us from Athens, Sharon Shapiro-Fox, the Director of Government Affairs, and joining Sharon from Athens is Vice President Rondi. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are here this evening to consider the annual proposed adjustments to solid waste refuge rates for the 22-23 fiscal year. We come to you every year at this time to adjust the rates as per the pre-approved formula ratified via the Proposition 218 process in April 2019. The approved formula is based on 6 industry indices, and you'll see them on the screen there: labor, fuel, equipment, waste to energy, disposal, and other. This year, we see some increases across those indices. The largest increase is to the fuel indices at 102.23%. When each of those index percentage changes are multiplied by their component weight and totaled, we get the total indices rate change for the year, and that is 5.4% for FY 22-23. There is a proposed increase to the multifamily recycling fee index of 2.98%, and that is a fee that is assessed only to multifamily customers. The city's current agreement, as you know, was approved in June 2019 with a 5-year rate structure as laid out as follows: 7% annual residential and multifamily increase, 14% commercial increase phase-in for 5 years, plus the indices rate change that is that 5.4% for this fiscal year, plus 1%. So 2022-23 fiscal year is year 4 of that 5-year rate structure. Okay, all of that means that the residential rate proposed increase for FY 22-23 is 13.4%, and for the commercial rate, that's an increase of 20.4%. For residents, this means that the monthly annual bill that this year was $22.72 will increase to $25 $2.48. We can see from this chart that that is still fairly comparable to neighboring and comparable cities in the area. For commercial refuse rates, that means that the current rate of $168.55 monthly charge will now go to $203.55. It should be noted that the comparison rates here are mostly 21, 22 rates, as other cities are going through a similar process and as yet don't have their 22, 23 rates. Everything is in line with the existing approved agreement and rate structure. We did want to highlight one Athens requested operational change, and that is to service commercial Redondo Beach organics routes, conduct and record tonnage weight check, and then complete the organics collection route in Hermosa Beach. There'll be no change at all to the services for residential collection. Staff recommends the proposed operational change as it will have no impact on Redondo Beach services, but should reduce heavy vehicle traffic on our roads while still maintaining accurate reporting. So with that, the recommendation is to take public testimony, close the public hearing, and adopt by title only resolution number CC 2206-034, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redondo Beach, California, establishing contractors' charges and corresponding city fees for residential, multifamily, and commercial refuge collection for the 2022-23 fiscal year, and direct staff to allow commercial organics commingling with the City of Hermosa Beach and monitor implementation. That's the end of our brief annual presentation. Myself, Director Saman, and the Athens staff are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Horvath.
You want to ask if there's any public comment first?
Public comment first? Sure, we can take public comment first. Is there any public comment?
There are no comments on Zoom and none on e-comment as well.
Is that the required order? Public comments first before council? No, either way.
required, but it's
just faster. Got it. Okay.
Okay.
No e-comments either. All right, Councilmember Horvath.
I'd make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, all in favor to close the public hearing? All right.
Okay. And
Any objections? No, all right.
Now I'd make a motion to adopt by title only resolution CC 2206-034 and direct staff to allow commercial organics commingling with the City of Hermosa Beach to monitor implementation.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Nierenheim. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, that passes 5-0.
I thought that Councilmember MD wanted to speak.
No, it's okay.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, may I read the title of the resolution, please? Council adopted by title only resolution number CC-2206-034, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redondo Beach, California, establishing contractors' charges and corresponding city fees for residential, multifamily, and commercial refuse collection for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to, thank you, Vicky. Moving on to item L3. Director Saman up again. I guess, is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion. Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Nierenheim. Any objections?
We just need a
We need to
public
get
ex parte.
Oh, ex parte, yes. Councilmember Nierenheim, ex parte.
I have nothing to report. Thank you, sir.
This is, by the way, the public hearing to consider the proposed assessments for the street landscaping and lighting assessment district for fiscal year 2022-2023. Councilmember Lowenstein, you have any ex parte?
None to report, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath?
Nope.
Councilmember Emdy?
I have none, thanks.
All right, myself, none. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So I think we did that.
No, well,
Well,
yeah.
All right, yeah, there was a motion, in a second. Are there any objections?
No.
No, all right. Oh, yeah, public hearing is open. Director Smoss.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This will be even a shorter presentation because it's just going to be verbal. It's our annual discussion with the Landscape and Lighting Assessment District. And I won't steal Andy's thunder on this one because if I say a couple of more words, it'll finish it. So I'll turn it over to Andy, our city engineer, to present that for you.
All right.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem, Andy Winchie, City Engineer. This is the annual report on the district I presented on May 3rd, including the assessment diagram and methodology, projected costs for next year as per the law. At that time, the council passed a resolution of intent to levy an assessment to address those costs and set tonight's public hearing. Tonight's action is about taking public input and deciding whether or not to authorize collection of the revenue needed to support the work of the district. This revenue is collected via the annual property tax bill, and the proposed resolution authorizing the assessment proposes no increase from the amount that has been collected every year since 1991. The maximum assessment that can be collected is based on a formula that results in a charge of about $59 annually to a typical residential parcel and about double that for a typical commercial parcel. The maximum that currently can be collected from all the parcels in the district in any year is just over 1.5 million, which is typically about $1 million less than the projected expenditures. The city's general fund has historically covered the gap between the expenses of the district and the assessment collected via the property tax bill. If the assessment is approved as recommended, the gap for the next fiscal year is expected to be about $1.07 million. To be able to collect the assessment, staff is recommending that the city council take public testimony, close the public hearing, and adopt the attached resolution number 2206-033, which would authorize levying the assessment in its full legal amount. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Chief Engineer Wingy. All right, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Oh, public comment.
Or any questions? Sorry.
Public comment.
Oh, do we have public comment on this?
There is none.
All right. Sorry, I got confused. I thought we asked that already. None. All right, Councilmember Horvath.
Okay, motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All right, Councilmember Horvath with the motion, Narenheim with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
And then before I make the motion to adopt the resolution, I will just recommend to the future council next year, the subsidy has just continued to grow year over year. We've talked about it ad nauseum in the past, but I would just recommend that at some point we finally close this subsidy. It's since 1991, it needs to be corrected. So with that, I'd make the motion to adopt resolution CC 2206-033.
I actually have a question on that.
Or you close the public hearing?
No, you can still.
The council can still ask a question. That's the public hearing. I thought with the replacement of the Edison lights, the cost would actually go down significantly every year.
That actually is true. So yes, we are realizing a savings there, but the costs of water and electricity have gone up to the point that they have offset that cost for us. And that's what you're seeing with the engineer's report.
Okay. Wow, it's like, I think it was 120,000 a year, I want to say, something like that. I don't remember, but it's gone up that much, huh? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt.
You want to make a second?
Technically speaking.
I'll second the motion.
All right.
Thank you.
Technically speaking, you cannot ask questions after.
Something new every day.
Closed. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
We did that.
We're now voting on the resolution.
Now we're voting on the resolution.
Oh, resolution. All right. So you made a motion. All right. So motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Nobody. Passes 5-0.
Okay, council adopted by title only, resolution number CC-2206-033, a resolution of the City Council of Redondo Beach, California, confirming the diagram and assessment and levying of the assessment for the Street Landscaping and Lighting Assessment District for the fiscal year from July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023.
All right. Thank you, Vicky.
You're welcome.
City manager items?
Nothing this evening. It's been a long night, so just happy to see everybody in June. We got 2 more hearings and then hopefully a little, little R&R.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for all your hard work and all the staff's hard work on the budget. Mayor and council items. Councilmember Narenheim?
I have nothing to load you guys up with tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Lowenstein?
Yeah, two-parter. One is to agendize a discussion of the June 14th meeting to clarify the direction of the Charter Advisory Committee.
Okay, Charter.
Advisory Committee.
And is that to sort of bring back the resolution and any of the sort of
Any changes, yeah.
parameters?
Changes to the charter. I think there's a lot of clarifications needed.
I thought they were going to come back to us with a consent calendar item on next week.
You mean like a report, a monthly
Like a report / hey, we're going to do another meeting.
Well, I think there's the report would sort of be an update on what they talked about. If you want to consider, as something that I've heard's come up with the committee is the language in the resolution right now has a meeting on a monthly basis, and it's isolated to that, whether or not you want to grant them the ability to meet more frequently.
If we could have a meeting to clarify any
Yeah, it's
ambiguities.
sort of the,
And
kind of the
for example,
regulatory.
if the alternates need to be here in person too, when they're not up to bat.
Yeah.
Or they can log in remotely.
Right.
Actually.
So let's just bring it back and we can
Yeah.
talk about it at that time.
I got a referral to staff and we can go back. Anyways, yeah.
Too late.
All right.
And then the second part is to agendize the discussion on a potential ballot measure to put before voters as an amendment to the city charter on the March 2023 ballot, and that's for the November 1st, by the November 1st council meeting. November 1st is.
What's the item being agendized?
Any potential ballot measures that we might want to put in front of voters.
Oh, you mean you want to have a dedicated discussion at the council level in November as it pertains to what would ultimately be part of the March ballot?
Based on any recommendations that they make.
Right.
That we line this up for November, assuming that Mr. Webb doesn't slam me.
No, meaning you line up your discussion for November, meaning for a March election.
For a March
because
election,
there's no meeting a November. I mean, it would be
Right,
totally
so-
impractical to make them November
Right,
elections.
so-
He's lining up a discussion relative to anything he wants to put
Any
on the
potential
ballot.
ballot measures to line this up, because it seems like it's a long way away. It really
No, it'll
isn't
be
that
here
long
soon,
away.
sure.
It's only about 4.5 months away.
But does it need to be described with any more particularity than that?
No, because we don't know if or what they're going to recommend. But I'm just saying, if they're going to recommend something, we have the potential for, you don't have to do anything right away. I'm just saying, and then, because if we have to do it, we have to do it by a certain date, and I believe it's beginning of December.
Yeah, you got to call for the election in early December.
So, what would you?
I was just going to suggest, and we were going to bring it back. I talked to Mr. Wazansky the night of that meeting. Maybe you can make the motion to bring back the resolution regarding timing. And then that would allow, frequency of the meeting, give them more clear direction of when they'd like to hear back, a deadline you'd like to hear from them. And you can put that in the reso.
In the reso, next week, we'll discuss.
They want to meet more often, and you can amend that, and then you can give them a deadline. Instead of just every other month, you can say, hey, we'd like to hear by this date for things to be on the March ballot.
Okay,
actually, to do
so
this-
that could be part of the discussion for next week.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. Was
Hold
my
on, you need
my
to vote. You need to
motion?
vote. You need a second on your motion to agendize that for next week. So is there a second on his thing? I'll second it.
Okay.
I seconded Lowenstein's motion to have a discussion about any other changes to the resolution related to the charter committee. So all in favor?
Okay, I heard two different things, and so.
First, there's two parts. The first one was about next week.
Yeah.
And then the second part would be a discussion in the beginning of November.
Understood that. I heard two different things on the first part.
The first part is
Yeah.
basically anything that we want to clarify that was ambiguous to them.
So the question is it about timing or is it about everything?
Everything.
Everything.
Okay.
Everything. Like whether the alternates need to be there, in person, so on and so forth.
Correct.
Okay, that'd be great.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't clear.
And the November discussion falls in line with their sort of performance schedule, right? That's really what you're after.
Correct.
Yeah.
He just wants to put a placeholder on the agenda.
Yeah.
So is there a second for that?
I'll
second it. All right.
It's going to be there anyways, but yeah, might as well.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all opposed? We have abstinence?
That's fine.
All right, 5-0.
Okay, nothing else. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Horvath.
No.
All right. Consistent actually with exactly what Councilmember Lowenstein was saying, I'd like to agendize discussion at the latest possible date. Well, query whether we can even have this discussion without an environmental impact report, but to change the FAR on Artesia to 1.5, which we already voted to do as part of the housing plan. If our housing plan doesn't pass in time, then the residents won't get to vote on it in March. So I'd like to have a discussion to parse out the FAR change and put
In
that
the
on the
event that we
ballot.
can't complete the comprehensive environmental for the full-on general plan update and do exclusively, okay, that's a discussion item. I'm not exactly sure. PlaceWorks is the group that's ultimately going to study that for us on our behalf. We certainly, I think, want to take advantage of the synergies that the two environmental reviews would provide. But whether or not we could pull that out and have that as a standalone ballot measure, I'll have to do a little research and get back to you. But we can do a referral on that.
Okay. You need a vote on that?
Yeah, I'm assuming that's something everybody wants to see.
All right, is there a second on that?
I'll second on it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. All right. Passes 5-0. Councilmember MD.
No, thank you.
I actually have one I forgot.
Go ahead, Councilmember Nairn.
Thank you. So we changed our rules and allow us to be able to show up remotely. And I was watching one of the commission meetings, and they were like, well, does that mean we can do it too? And then the answer from the clerk's office was, well, no, they changed their own rules for them. And I was like, oh, whoops, we forgot about that. So I'd like to agendize a discussion to allow commission members to meet, to allow same process for them to allow meet online or have someone appear remotely via Zoom. You know
what, where that might be better, because it really, the implication is budget. I'll come back with a BRR on that. I'm not sure exactly what the staff resource implication would be. It does require additional time and energy on the part of IT to be here to ensure that it's working and functional. So it's a bit of a budget consideration, but we can get you a BRR on that.
Okay, because I don't understand why IT would necessarily.
Well.
Okay, I don't want to get into the long discussion.
We'll
talk about it later.
we'll explain it as part of the BRR.
That's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
That is it.
I'll make a motion. Are we to adjourn?
Yes,
So I'll make
to adjourn, sorry.
in memory of? Are we doing in memory of or no?
Yes.
No, it's not. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And said no one never. We are adjourned. Thank you.